Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. A flight carrying more than 200 passengers crashes in India. Search and rescue efforts underway. Protests over immigration raids are spreading across the country, with cities reporting fires, curfews, and arrests. A federal court will hear California Governor Gavin Newsom's challenge against Trump's troop deployment to L.A. The governors of New York, Illinois, and Minnesota will testify before Congress over sanctuary policies in their states. We'll tune into that hearing.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thanks for joining us. Today is Thursday, June 12th. I'm Kerry Dunst. We begin with devastating news out of India. A plane crashed just minutes after taking off from the western city of Ahmedabad. Right now, city officials say more than 200 people were killed in the crash. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was headed to London when it went down with 242 people on board. It's one of the deadliest air disasters in India's history. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the latest and a warning. This report contains some footage that some viewers may find disturbing.
Wreckage and debris scattered in Ahmedabad after a passenger jet crashed in western India. One local resident described the scene.
I was sitting at home. There was a loud noise. It felt like an earthquake. I came out and saw smoke. I did not know it was a plane crash. Once I came here, then I found out. I saw the crashed plane, many bodies lying.
A senior police officer provided an update on the emergency response.
The London-bound flight of Air India crashed here soon after its takeoff. For preliminary reports, we have learned there were 230 passengers on board, and the plane crashed at a doctor's hostel. The rescue agencies, firefighters, police, and civil administration reached the crash site within 2 to 3 minutes. The search and rescue operation is currently underway.
Air India said the flight included Indian, British, and Portuguese nationals, and one Canadian. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi posted on X, quote, "The tragedy in Ahmedabad has stunned and saddened us. It is heartbreaking beyond words. In this sad hour, my thoughts are with everyone affected by it. Have been in touch with ministers and authorities who are working to assist those affected." British Prime Minister Keir Starmer took to the platform as well, posting, quote, "The scenes emerging of a London-bound plane carrying many British nationals crashing in the Indian city of Ahmedabad are devastating. I am being kept updated as the situation develops, and my thoughts are with the passengers and their families at this deeply distressing time." Starmer added the UK was working with Indian authorities. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
We'll keep you posted as new developments emerge in this tragedy. Turning now to the protests in L.A., the Justice Department is opposing California's Governor Gavin Newsom's request to block the president's deployment of the National Guard troops in Los Angeles. It's urging the court not to grant the request, calling it a political stunt that puts lives at risk. Newsom sued the Trump administration earlier this week, arguing the deployment is illegal and impedes state authority under the Posse Comitatus Act. That act says that the military cannot be used for civilian law enforcement except under very specific circumstances. Federal officials say the troops are not patrolling neighborhoods, but defending federal buildings and personnel. A federal court hearing is scheduled for today. Meanwhile, arrested demonstrators were loaded onto police buses last night as a curfew took effect. President Trump said yesterday that Los Angeles would be burning to the ground if not for the measures taken by his administration.
I'm very proud to have helped Los Angeles survive. Los Angeles right now, if we didn't do what we did, would be burning to the ground. And that's not over yet.
Protests over immigration raids are spreading across the country. Several cities are reporting arrests, fires, and curfews. The White House yesterday issued a stern warning.
And let this be an unequivocal message to left-wing radicals in other parts of the country who are thinking about copycatting the violence in an effort to stop this administration's mass deportation efforts. You will not succeed. Any lawlessness will only strengthen this president's resolve to defend the majority of Americans who want to live their lives peacefully, free from the fear of violent, criminal, illegal aliens.
The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind.
In Seattle yesterday, protesters set a dumpster on fire outside a federal building. They also clashed with police who responded with pepper spray. Spokane, Washington's mayor imposed an overnight curfew after dozens were arrested outside an ICE office. In New York and Chicago, protests near ICE facilities led to clashes and dozens of arrests, some on felony charges. The demonstrations come ahead of Saturday's planned military parade in Washington, D.C. A nationwide day of protest has been planned to coincide with this. President Trump, meanwhile, has warned that they will be met with heavy force. And President Trump is set to nix California's plan for electric vehicles. The White House confirmed that Trump will sign a measure this morning. Here's more on that.
The White House says the president will sign 3 congressional resolutions on Thursday, barring the state's EV mandates and diesel engine rules. That will block California's plan to end the sale of gasoline-only vehicles by 2035. Another resolution will block the state's moves to require a rising number of zero-emission heavy trucks. The American Petroleum Institute called Trump's move a victory for American consumers and manufacturers. It's also a big win for auto firms including General Motors and Toyota, which had lobbied hard against California's rules. GM said the change would help align emission standards with market realities. Back in 2020, California had set out a plan to require all new cars to be electric or plug-in hybrid by 2035. Now, State Governor Gavin Newsom has vowed to challenge the repeals in court. He says the action is illegal and will cost California taxpayers $45 billion in extra healthcare costs. The new moves are just the latest in a series of actions taking aim at electric vehicles. A separate bill passed by the House of Representatives in May would end a $7,500 tax credit for new EVs.
House Republicans are pushing to slash more than $9 billion in previously approved federal spending. It's part of an effort to follow through on President Trump's campaign promise to rein in government waste. The vote today targets its foreign aid programs and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That helps fund NPR, PBS, and thousands of public media outlets nationwide. Republicans argue the spending is wasteful, but Democrats warn the move could damage America's global standing. The administration is using a tool that lets the president formally request the cancellation of approved funds. That then triggers a 45-day window during which the money is frozen while Congress considers the proposal. If lawmakers don't act within that time, the funding remains intact. Unlike most spending bills that need 60 Senate votes, such approved spending cuts require only a simple majority. And the governors of New York, Illinois, and Minnesota are testifying before the House Oversight Committee over sanctuary policies in their states. We're going to tune into that hearing now live.
The Biden-Harris administration deliberately dismantled the border security to unleash the worst border disaster in American history. Their radical policies allowed millions of illegals to flood into our country. Americans voted to end the Biden border crisis, and President Trump has delivered on his promise to secure the border. He has taken bold, decisive action to restore our sovereignty and make America safer with each passing day. And here in Congress, we are working to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill to fund U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement so it can carry out the mass deportation of criminal illegal aliens. Despite President Trump's efforts to secure the border and enforce the law, Democrat-run sanctuary cities and states are siding with illegal aliens. For today's Democrat Party, it seems unlimited illegal immigration isn't a failure of policy, it is the policy. And that agenda is being pushed at every level of government. And this comes at a steep cost to public safety, strains law enforcement resources, and imposes a massive financial burden on both federal and state taxpayers. That's not just bad policy, it is a serious oversight failure. Congress must confront this absurd reality. State and local officials are actively undermining federal immigration enforcement, even when it's aimed at making their own communities safer. It's time to determine what legislative action is needed to stop this subversion and restore the rule of law. It's growing more and more absurd every day. In recent weeks, we've witnessed a Democrat senator who traveled to a foreign country for a wellness check on a foreign MS-13 gang member and now indicted human smuggler that ended with a photo op and margaritas on the rocks. The fervor among Democrats who take the side of illegal alien criminals grew so strong that I even had to deny a written request from members of this very committee to go on a taxpayer-funded junket to visit with this same MS-13 gang member. Earlier this year, I launched an investigation into the radical pro-illegal immigration policies of sanctuary jurisdictions. At an oversight committee hearing with some of our country's worst sanctuary city mayors earlier this year, the public was able to clearly see how they care more about illegal aliens than their own citizens. They have pledged not to cooperate with federal law enforcement officials, not even to hand over criminals in their custody who were originally arrested by their own local law enforcement officials for crimes. The absurdity does not stop there. Several of those local officials pointed the finger to laws and policies that their state governments put in place. I invited these governors here today because, as the chief executives of their states, they willfully ignore federal law, shield illegal aliens, and pass the cost of free services onto their hardworking taxpayers. It's hard to figure out whose side these governors are on. They shield criminals while their own citizens pay the price. Just a few weeks ago, Minnesota Governor Walz stood at a commencement podium and smeared ICE agents as, quote, Trump modern-day Gestapo, end quote. Comparing brave law enforcement officers who risk their lives to uphold federal law to Nazi thugs is not just wrong, it's vile and disgusting. I can only hope this reckless remark was not meant to incite violence. Assaults on ICE officers are already up 400% compared to this time last year. And we have witnessed repeated attempts at obstruction and assaults against federal law enforcement recently captured on video in California. Governor Hochul's sanctuary policies cost taxpayers billions to house, feed, and provide driver's license for illegal aliens while the cost to rent rises and hospitals are overrun. Her defiance of federal law invites crime to plague communities across the state. Governor Pritzker faces lawsuits for obstructing ICE as he turns cities like Chicago into havens for drugs and crime. He's yet another governor providing free care to illegal aliens that many of his own citizens lack. These governors handcuff law enforcement from doing their jobs, harbor predators, and call it compassion. It's not compassion, and it's costing lives, hurting Americans, and draining taxpayer money. Congress must consider whether to defund every single penny of federal dollars going to cities and states that prioritize criminal, illegal aliens over the American people. Americans want to return to common sense. The Trump administration and this Republican Congress aims to restore our safety and sovereignty. It's past time for these governors to put America first. I now yield to Ranking Member Lynch for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank our witnesses. Governor Walz, good to see you again. Governor Pritzker, Governor Hochul, good to see you again. Ms. Perryman, thank you for your willingness to come before this committee and help us with our work. At this very moment, as we sit in this hearing and at the order of President Trump, the National Guard are on the streets of Los Angeles and active duty Marines are on their way. At Trump's order, Californians are now forced to navigate an active military zone in their midst as they try to go to work or decide if it's safe to send their kids to school. And because of Trump, no American city or state is safe as he lays this groundwork to take his militarization playbook nationwide. 2 days ago, he confirmed that he is considering invoking the Insurrection Act to expand the deployment of active duty military forces against civilians across this country, preparing for a future in which dissent is met with armed force and the machinery of war is turned inward on the American people. If unchecked, this marks not just a threat to our most sacred civil liberties, but a violent blow to American democracy itself. Last week in Los Angeles, peaceful Americans came out to protest the administration's cruel and illegal mass deportation operations in their neighborhoods. President Trump inflamed events on the grounds as an excuse to unleash the U.S. military on its own people, sending in 4,000 National Guard members without the approval of the governor of California, and deploying 700 active duty Marines into an American city is meant to provoke, not pacify, and is an aggressive assertion of federal control where it is neither needed nor desired. Our Marines are often the first responders in a war zone, but American neighborhoods are not war zones. Protesters are not the enemy. They are Americans who have the constitutional right to peacefully assemble and speak up. The problem for President Trump and my colleagues across the aisle is that the American people hate what he is doing in Los Angeles to inflame tensions. Americans are deeply concerned that the president deployed federal troops to an American city over the objections of state and local leadership, and knowing it would escalate the situation. He put members of the public, law enforcement officers, and troops in danger because he loves the images and theatrics of using force. Let's be clear. Democrats oppose violence and lawlessness in all its forms, as well as any threat to public safety. President Trump himself is the worst offender. The chaos he is fomenting in LA is just an extension of his flagrant disregard for the Constitution and our rule of law and democracy. It is clear that the Trump administration's mass deportation policy is not limited to those that have committed serious and violent crimes. It also includes children who are U.S. citizens, immigrants with legal status, and even international students. On February 4th, President Trump deported a 10-year-old girl, a U.S. citizen who was recovering from brain cancer while traveling to Houston for an emergency hospital visit. This 10-year-old girl was detained and deported with her undocumented parents and 4 siblings, 3 of whom were also born here in the United States. Her parents have no criminal history, and what's going to happen to her, an American child, now that she can't see her expert doctors, is unknown. Trump deported another U.S. citizen, a 2-year-old toddler from Fort Lauderdale on February 21st, deported to Brazil. But because she is not a citizen or resident of Brazil, she had to enter the country as a tourist, which leaves her unable to access key programs like pediatric care and daycare or school. Are our cities safer now that this 10-year-old girl and the 2-year-old toddler are gone? U.S. citizens, both of them? In Austin, Texas, a husband and wife were recently detained after a routine traffic stop. The husband was quickly deported, while the wife was released to pick up her 3 children from school, only to be deported with them several days later. 2 of those kids are U.S. citizens. Is the family the violent criminals that Trump is supposed to be saving us from? The Trump administration has tried to sweep aside the fact that this pattern of mass deportation operation is letting dangerous criminals roam free while it picks off peaceful, contributing members of our communities. Busboys at restaurants, day laborers at Home Depot, parents who are taking their kids to school. In late March, ICE agents wearing masks and hoodies detained Rumeysa Öztürk. And those of you who watched that abduction, when you compare the old films of the Gestapo grabbing people off the streets of Poland, and you compare them to those nondescript thugs who grabbed that graduated student, it does look like a Gestapo operation. It does look like the Gestapo. She was snatched away and detained 1,700 miles away. Her congresswoman couldn't reach her. Her family couldn't reach her. She was held incommunicado, 1,700 miles away. Her attorney could not reach her. Yeah, that was Gestapo-like. That's an appropriate comparison. That's exactly what it was like. And when U.S. citizens, she was here legally studying at Tufts University. She had every right to be here. We gave her permission to come. Her family entrusted us. They chose Boston because it's a place of intellectual freedom and respect for cultural freedom. And that trust was apparently misplaced. Ms. Ozturk's a Turkish national on a student visa to attend Tufts University. A video of that incident shows Ozturk walking along a public street in Boston, Massachusetts, my home city, when several masked figures just snatched her phone and backpack, handcuffed her, and hustled her into an unmarked vehicle. What's that sound like? What does that sound like? The Trump administration is putting extremism, cruelty, and chaos over protecting kids and families. Trump isn't focused on getting violent criminals off our streets. He's terrorizing our communities to fulfill deportation quotas with fathers and mothers, grandparents, and kids. And he's trying to strong-arm our city and state leaders to divert their limited resources away from serious public safety threats to instead focus on peaceful, law-abiding families, just as he has diverted federal resources away from combating drug trafficking, violent crime, and terrorism to fuel his lawless mass deportation campaign. Trump isn't trying to protect us. He's trying to divide us. It's us and them. He's trying to divide us. And some people are helping him. He's pitting neighbor against neighbor. But it's not immigrant kids who are about to kick millions of Americans off their health care. It's not them. And he's doing that to pay for a tax break for billionaires. And it's not immigrants who are using the military to silence Americans exercising their right to speak truth to power. These are not the strong and measured actions of the leader of a free country. They are the ruthless maneuvers of an aspiring autocrat hell-bent on consolidating power by any means necessary. This is disgraceful. It should not happen in this country. This is wrong. Deploying the military against a civilian population is wrong. And if we don't step up, this will continue. If we don't step up and declare what is right under our Constitution, then other cities, other citizens will meet this same fate. I'm proud of my Democratic colleagues who are willing to stand up to this thuggery. Trump is a wannabe gangster, and he's showing the world what he's about. And I'm proud. You know, my dad served in the Second World War. He fought the Nazis in Northern Africa. He fought the Nazis on the Italian peninsula. And I think he's looking down right now and he's happy that I'm fighting today's Nazis. He's proud of that. We all should be. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Without objection, Representatives Stauber, Finstead, Fishback, Emmer, Morrison, and Craig of Minnesota, Representatives Miller, LaHood, Davis, and Ramirez of Illinois, Representatives Stefanik, Tenney, Lawler, Goldman, Ocasio-Cortez, Gillen of New York, and Moskowitz of Florida are waived onto the committee for the purpose of questioning the witnesses at today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. Our witnesses today include the governors of 3 states. We want to welcome you all here. First, we have Tim Walz, governor of the state of Minnesota. He was sworn into office on January 7th, 2019. His second term began on January 2nd, 2023. Governor, welcome back to the House of Representatives. Next, we have J.B. Pritzker, governor of the state of Illinois. He was sworn into office on January 14th, 2019. His second term began on January 9th, 2023. I'm going to yield briefly to my colleague Raj Krishnamurthy for further introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for yielding. In Illinois, we like our pizza deep, our politics lively, and our budgets balanced. The last one used to be a miracle before Governor Pritzker took office. I know firsthand, as the son of immigrants who realized the American dream in Illinois, that immigrants make enormous contributions to our country. Governor Pritzker understands that too. His great-grandfather fled pogroms in Ukraine in 1881 and settled in Chicago to build a better life. That legacy has shaped his lifelong commitment to public service, justice, and opportunity. Before entering public office, Governor Pritzker built a successful business career and became a leading philanthropist, supporting early childhood education and establishing the Illinois Holocaust Museum. Governor Pritzker has delivered historic investments in education, workforce training, infrastructure, technology, and clean energy. all while expanding paid leave, raising the minimum wage, and defending the rights of all Illinoisans. Governor, thank you for your leadership and for joining us today.
Yields back. Next, we have Kathy Hochul, Governor of the state of New York. She was sworn into office on August 24th, 2021. Welcome, Governor. And finally, we have Skye Perryman. She is the President and CEO of the Democracy Forward Foundation. Thank you all for joining us. Look forward to your discussion this afternoon. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please raise their right hand. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you all solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please let the record show that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. Thank you all, and you may take a seat. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statement to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it's on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please wrap up. I now recognize Governor Walz for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Lynch, and members of the committee. I'm proud to be here today as the governor of the great state of Minnesota. Wherever you go in this country, people tend to want the same basic things: safe neighborhoods, affordable household goods, meaningful work, good schools. That's what my administration has worked to ensure for our people, and that's what we've delivered. Under our leadership, Minnesota has been ranked the 4th best state to live in, the 2nd best state to raise a family in, and the 3rd best state for jobs. And when it comes to serious crime, Minnesota has hit its lowest level in over 3 decades, and we consistently have lower violent crime rates than the U.S. average. Now, we have a broken immigration system in this country. I think everyone in this room agrees with that. But nothing Minnesota has done to serve its own people stands in the way of the federal government managing border security and policies. While you've convened this hearing to explore the issue of so-called sanctuary states, Minnesota is not even a sanctuary state. Minnesota legislature has passed no such bill making Minnesota a sanctuary state, and I have signed no such law. Minnesota cooperates with federal authorities in a number of ways. When there's a convicted felon in our prisons, we ask about their immigration status and share that information with the Department of Homeland Security. We also cooperate with Homeland Security requests when there's a judicial warrant and when due process has been afforded by our Constitution has been served. But enforcing immigration law is not the role of local and state governments. The fact is, Congress has given federal agencies the authority to enforce immigration laws across this country. That includes Minnesota, and I support them doing so. It's the federal government's job to secure the border. That's why when I was in Congress, I visited the southern border and voted for bills that would have increased funding for Border Patrol, made it easier to hire qualified agents, and deployed advanced technologies to the border. Most importantly, I recognize that securing our border does not mean we sacrifice our constitutional values. Unfortunately, the cruel and misguided policies of this current administration fail to live up to those values. Minnesotans are angry with what they've seen happen to their neighbors. They're angry that the federal government has been snatching people up, putting them in prison, and deporting them without a shred of due process. There's been no notice, no meaningful opportunity to object, and according to the president, no way to get out of these overseas prisons once you end up there. And let's be clear, many of these are law-abiding Americans, people who have been granted asylum or promised protected status. In many cases, it seems these people were reported not based on a criminal behavior, but how they looked or what they've said and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Even U.S. citizens, like a 4-year-old boy with cancer, sent to Mexico, away from his father, away from the medical needs, to a country he was not born in or had never been to. Americans deserve a sensible, humane, and effective immigration policy that reduces illegal immigration while protecting fundamental rights. Meanwhile, the administration continues to make life worse for hardworking Americans in a lot of other ways, trying to slash Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, making basic household goods more expensive, and telling people they just need to do more with less. The American people deserve better. You all have the power to legislate, to investigate this administration's abuse and overreach, and protect the American people. And I have to say I'm disappointed. At a crucial inflection point in our nation's history, Congress is choosing to spend its time trying to cast blames on states like Minnesota that have no hand in creating this crisis. While we may disagree on the best way to maintain border security and public safety, I know we should all be able to agree on a few principles: that everyone in America deserves due process, and that we live in a free country where people should not be locked up for exercising their basic constitutional rights. I hope you'll join me in enforcing accountability to those fundamental ideas, and I look forward to your questions. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I now recognize Governor Pritzker for his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the committee, good morning, and thank you for inviting me. As governor of the great state of Illinois, I have seen firsthand how states have had to shoulder the consequences of a broken immigration system. I'm proud of how we have responded by promoting public safety, treating people with dignity, supporting our economy, and respecting the rule of law. Safe and compassionate immigration policies, I believe, are vital. In fact, my own family owes everything to this country accepting a young refugee named Nicholas Pritzker to its shores over a century ago. My great-grandfather fled the massacre of Jews in Ukraine and arrived in the United States when he was just 10, without a penny to his name. A social service agency provided him a place to live, a public school taught him English, a public university allowed him to pursue a higher education. My father and grandfather both were naval officers and raised their families with a powerful sense of duty to community and patriotism to our country that still lives deep in my generation. Both were successful entrepreneurs. My family story is not unique. Today, Illinois is home to 1.9 million immigrants. Just like my great-grandfather, they are hardworking, raising families, and paying taxes. Our state and our country have been strengthened by people from across the globe seeking freedom, opportunity, and refuge here. Recently, children, pregnant women, and others fled poverty, violence, and persecution, seeking asylum at our border. Some border state politicians chose to treat them as political pawns, busing them to states like mine and dropping them off in the dead of night in the freezing cold. Illinois chose a different path. Faced with a humanitarian crisis, our state made sure children and families did not go hungry or freeze to death. By doing so, we helped to maintain safety and order in Chicago. As governor, one of my responsibilities is to keep the public safe. That is why I expanded our state police, banned assault weapons and ghost guns to take guns out of the hands of criminals, and invested more than ever before in violence prevention. As a result, violent crime is down in Illinois, and Chicago ended 2024 with its lowest homicide rate in 5 years. As I have consistently said, violent criminals have no place on our streets, and if they are undocumented, I want them out of Illinois and out of our country. And as we are reminded in Los Angeles this week, we can all agree that violence of any kind, whomever it is directed at, is unacceptable. People must be held accountable to the law. Illinois follows the law, but let me be clear, we expect the federal government to follow the law too. We will not participate in abuses of power. We will not violate court orders. We will not ignore the Constitution. We will not defy the Supreme Court. We will not take away people's rights to peacefully protest. We also respect, and expect this administration to respect, the traditions and legal precedent that dictate how and when our National Guard and military are deployed. As governor, I've had to make the difficult decision to call the Illinois National Guard into service. I have always done it in partnership with my local governments and law enforcement, and with deep and abiding respect for the sacrifice I was asking of our volunteer armed forces. It's wrong to deploy the National Guard and active duty Marines into an American city over the objection of local law enforcement just to inflame a situation and create a crisis. Just as it's wrong to tear children away from their homes and their mothers and fathers who have spent decades living and working in our communities, raising their families. Besides being a father and husband, the greatest honor of my life has been serving as governor. I believe with my whole heart that Illinois is the best place in the country to live, work, and to raise a family. Illinoisans take seriously their responsibility in upholding the most fundamental values of our nation, values like kindness, empathy, hard work, and fair play. Our people embody the most American ideal of all, that where your life began matters far less than the dreams you can realize here for yourself and your family. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Governor Hochul for her opening statement.
Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Lynch, and members of this committee, as we speak, an American city has been militarized over the objections of their governor. At the outset, I just want to say that this is a flagrant abuse of power and nothing short of an assault on our American values. My views on immigration are simple and direct. Our nation needs secure borders. Our nation needs comprehensive immigration reform from this body. And our state laws dictate that we cooperate with ICE in criminal cases. And our values dictate that we treat all law-abiding people with dignity and respect. The America I believe in is a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. Abandoning either threatens the very foundation on which this great country was built. You know, for 400 years, New York has prospered because of the hard work of these people, these newcomers. People like my grandfather who fled great poverty in Ireland. Grandma and Grandpa had the same American dream that the immigrants today have. I see it in their eyes. They're not here for handouts. They're not here to take advantage of the situation. They're here to work. They want to contribute, earn their place, raise their families. Yet, every day there's another story of children being ripped from the arms of their mothers, wives separated from their husbands, families arrested while attending legal immigration appointments. You know, not long ago in a small town known as Sackett's Harbor in upstate New York, masked and armed ICE agents stormed into a home before dawn. They abducted a mother, her 3 children, including a 3rd grader. They were cast into a living hell in a detention facility in Texas. I immediately contacted Border Czar Tom Homan and demanded their release. In Jefferson County, more than 60% of the residents voted for Donald Trump. And those people protested in the streets. Local Republican lawmakers, business owners, school leaders all spoke out. Finally, after 2 long weeks, the family was finally returned home. In New York, we understand the difference between going after criminals and traumatizing law-abiding families. Now, some of you will use this hearing to stoke fear. I'm here to talk about the facts. New York has managed an unprecedented immigrant influx because of a broken border. Yet at the same time, our state has become stronger and safer. Today, New York has the lowest homicide rate among the nation's top 10 states. We didn't achieve this with indiscriminate roundups, not by tearing apart innocent families, but by investing $2.6 billion in public safety, engaging in smart, targeted policing, and partnering with law enforcement, federal law enforcement, to apprehend and deport serious criminals. And since I've become governor, we've cooperated in handing over 1,300 convicted criminals to ICE. But what we don't do is civil immigration enforcement. That's the federal government's job. New Yorkers need their state troopers on our highways, seizing guns and drugs. States like mine are doing our part, but we can't be expected to fix the broken immigration system. You know, and the very people who go on cable news and rail about the border are the same ones who torpedo bipartisan legislation each and every time. So here's my message. if you truly care about public safety, if you truly care about the economy, if you truly care about human dignity, then sit down, negotiate, have real reform, secure the border, revive legal pathways, and let people work. At the end of the day, I'll go home and do my job keeping New Yorkers safe. I hope that you will do yours. Thank you.
And I now recognize the Democrat witness, Ms. Perryman, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Acting Ranking Member, for having me here today. And at the outset, let me offer my sincerest condolences to all of you for the passing and your loss of your colleague, Representative Jerry Conley. I'm here today as a lawyer and as the president and CEO of Democracy Forward Foundation, which is a national nonpartisan legal organization that is committed to achieving democracy and a nation that enables all people to thrive. At Democracy Forward, we represent people and communities who make up the very fabric of our nation on a pro bono basis in federal and state courts and regulatory bodies throughout the country. I know this is a hearing focused on immigration, and so I would like to say at the outset and echo the calls for bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform. I will also note that the rhetoric that we have heard the president and his allies use in recent days about immigrants and people in this country is inaccurate, overly politicized, and not solutions-oriented. Fundamentally, Democracy Forward Foundation's work centers on the premise that when the government does its job and delivers for people, our society is stronger. And when our government strays from that purpose, ignoring the Constitution, not achieving and respecting the fidelity of people's rights, our democracy and our people are in danger. Right now, based on the work that we are doing, I am here to say that our American people are in danger and that our democracy is in crisis. I am looking at these United States flags. We need to remember who we are. We right now have a president who has proclaimed without irony that he is a king in a nation that next year will celebrate 250 years since it threw off the reins of monarchy. Since Inauguration Day, the president and his administration have acted beyond the lawful bounds of executive authority. They have usurped the power of this Congress. They have sought to eliminate due process of law. They have ignored court orders, and they are targeting people, civil society organizations, and lawyers. These are anti-democratic actions that present an overall threat to every single American and their well-being and to our values in America. That is why at Democracy Forward Foundation, we have had to go to court to file more than 70 legal actions in federal and state courts and agencies and offices since Inauguration Day to protect the American people's rights. From stopping the president's federal funding freeze, to blocking the decimation of the Department of Education, to having to safeguard due process, to challenging DOJ and Elon Musk's attempts to access personal data on behalf of individual Americans, our team is in court every single day on behalf of people of all identities and ideologies, people in red states and blue states, people in small towns, urban areas, and rural communities. Our work at Democracy Forward demonstrates that the United States Constitution is still here, and it is here for all of us. This administration's tactics with regard to immigration enforcement that we have seen, they shock the conscience. They shock the conscience of the vast majority of the American people, including people who do not see eye to eye on how to fix our immigration problem in this country. They have led us to file and have to file litigation on behalf of religious communities to prevent ICE from entering houses of worship. We are litigating against policies that prolong the detention of individual immigrant children without their families. And of course, we are challenging the lack of due process afforded to our clients, men who were disappeared through an unlawful agreement between the government of El Salvador and the United States Department of State. All told, the courts have ruled against the current administration more than 170 times in less than 200 days because of the fast-moving harms and flagrant violations of the law and of our Constitution. And while this is a dire situation, our work demonstrates that the American people are determined to protect their rights. They are determined to use lawful and peaceful means of petitioning their government and, when necessary, of holding their government accountable. People have talked about their families, and last week was June 6th, which is, of course, the anniversary of when American troops landed on the beaches of Normandy in World War II. I, too, am the mother of a 9-year-old boy, and that 9-year-old boy's great-grandfather served in that battle, and many others throughout the European theater. But as I reflected last week, we don't need to be in Normandy to defend our democracy in June of 2025. We need to be here in these halls doing the work in courts across the country and in our communities. And we do need to remember the essential and historical commitment that our nation made at the end of that war to advance democracy and to ensure that we never turn our backs on people who are fleeing persecution. I so appreciate you inviting me here today to participate in this hearing, and it is with a sincere hope that we can come together that I offer my testimony and comments.
All right, opening statements have concluded. We're now going to begin the questioning portion of today's testimony. And I'm going to begin with Governor Walz. Governor Walz, I thought that maybe your statement referencing ICE as Gestapo was an outlier statement, but now that Mr. Lynch has endorsed it, it appears that it could be some type of Democrat talking point. Governor, do you and other Democrat politicians understand why referencing ICE as Gestapo is offensive? I'm going to explain. The Department of Homeland Security is reporting that ICE agents are now experiencing a 413% rise in assaults. We've seen numerous videos of rioters obstructing and assaulting federal law enforcement after your remarks, including in Los Angeles. So, Governor, do you think that comments like that and rhetoric like that put ICE officers and other law enforcement in greater danger?
Well, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, any attack on law enforcement is unacceptable, wherever it's at, whether it's state, local.
So you understand, and I've got limited time here. I want to highlight for the governors that real-world impact of the policies that you all continue to defend, even in your opening statements, have on American families. Earlier this year in Governor Pritzker's Illinois, a previously deported illegal alien who had re-entered the country was allegedly drunk driving near the University of Illinois when he struck a car sitting at a red light and then fled the scene. The crash killed 2 young women, including Katie Abraham, whose father and stepmother are here today. And this is her poster. Katie had her whole life ahead of her, cut off in an instant. Governor Pritzker, this illegal alien should never have been here. He didn't just flee the scene, he fled the state and was apprehended by federal marshals in Texas using a false name. He now faces criminal charges for reckless homicide, leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death, and driving under the influence resulting in death. And he faces a federal indictment for having a fraudulent permanent resident card, a fraudulent Social Security card, and a fraudulent use of passport. Governor Pritzker, do you agree that this illegal alien who killed Katie should never have been in the United States in the first place?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me express my condolences to the family, and those are terrible circumstances. Let me also say that anyone who commits a crime in the state of Illinois—
I understand, Governor. Should that criminal have been here in the first place? Did he have a right to be in this country illegally?
If the person is a criminal of any sort, then they ought to be
so that person had a right to be in the United States.
They ought to be given their due process rights, and they ought to be convicted. And
the criminal who entered this country illegally, in your testimony, had a right to be in this country.
No, I'm suggesting to you that when and I have responsibility for the state of Illinois, I can tell you that it's the responsibility of the federal government to manage immigration in this country. And if you're suggesting that the federal government didn't do its job, that is up to you.
Let me ask you this, Governor.
I can tell you that in the state of Illinois,
do you believe that President Biden did his job in securing the border?
I was critical of things that President Biden did. I think I've been very public about that. I wrote a letter to the president telling him that.
Okay, thank you. Now back to Governor Walz. You were obviously selected by Vice President Harris to be your running mate in 2024. I'm curious, did you ever ask Vice President Harris about former President Biden's and then President Biden's cognitive decline?
No, not that I can recall, Mr. Chairman.
You saw President Biden's disastrous debate performance. I'm just curious, you never did comment to Vice President Harris like, wow, you know, he may not be on the top of his game. Nothing was ever mentioned to Vice President Harris. And the reason I ask, obviously, is because I know you watch CNN, and other networks have interviewed a lot of people, including Jean-Pierre and Buttigieg and others that have suggested that they were shielded from President Biden and weren't allowed to speak to him, and that you know, his mental decline was obvious. You never discussed that with Vice President Harris?
No, not that I can recall, Chairman. And I, as governor and then being on the ticket, I was probably more concerned with my own debate performance than President Biden's. So no.
Let me ask you this, Governor. Do you believe that the Biden-Harris administration secured the border? You mentioned it's the federal government's role to secure the border, to protect Americans from illegals entering the country, I guess. Do you think they did a good job of that?
I think the border has been broken for a very long time through many administrations. It's one of the reasons why Vice President Harris was advocating so strongly for the bipartisan bill.
Did she mention her role as the border czar when you all were out campaigning? Or?
Not that I can recall, other than that we talked about the need to pass the bipartisan border legislation that would have done many of the things that, as a governor, I know would have made our jobs easier.
But President Trump secured the border without any legislation. I mean, that was kind of a myth that was in the media and a Democrat talking point, that we needed legislation to secure the border. The border's secure.
Everything's fixed.
That's step one. Step two is to deport the criminal illegals, and that's where we're facing obstruction in your all state. So I'm sure there are a lot more questions that will pertain to that. My time's expired. I now recognize Ranking Member Lynch for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's worth saying again that Democrats oppose violence and lawlessness in all its forms. I do want to point out that the vast majority of protesters have been peaceful. But the most egregious and sweeping displays of the use of force and lawlessness we see in the United States today, and the gravest threat to the rights and freedoms of those that we hold dear, are the acts of the Trump administration itself. President Trump and his administration have crossed the line over and over again, from January 6th, when this building was attacked at his direction, to invoking the Alien Enemies Act, to dismantling USAID, to ignoring court orders, to the attacks and threats against law firms that were protecting democracy. As in the 5 months since Trump took office and put the for sale sign over the White House, he's earned $2.9 billion on his crypto scam. I mean, to call this unprecedented, that word has lost all its meaning. He keeps making history, but the wrong kind. Just the act of sending the National Guard and troops and active duty Marines to L.A. was already an overreach. Supposedly, now we hear reports that those soldiers and Marines were sent to quell protests, but now are detaining civilians and are being trained to perform immigration enforcement functions. Ms. Perryman, what else could go wrong with the National Guard and Marines deployed in L.A.? What are the risks to the Americans who live, work, and exercise their right to freedom and to free speech there?
Well, I would just say that what our Constitution recognizes and how good government functions is really based on trust. And when we look at National Guards, it is the governors that often call the National Guards in. And so, of course, the fact that we are seeing a situation where the president has taken this step without cooperating with the governor and with local communities there is deeply concerning. And, of course, we know from history that could lead to escalations and could lead to violence. That is really problematic for all of our communities across the country, including in Los Angeles.
Thank you. Ms. Perryman, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has talked about the deployment order, and he testified that this order, and I'm quoting him, this order is getting ahead of a problem so that if in other places, if there are other riots in places where law enforcement officers are threatened, we would have the capability to surge the National Guard there if necessary. Ms. Perryman, how does the president's broad order and the presumption before the fact that military force would be deployed, how does that pose a threat to other cities across the country?
Well, again, it appears to be an escalation, and the main thing that's really important to so many Americans across the country, as well as local law enforcement in so many areas, that local law enforcement is there to help people be able to peacefully protest. And so there are ways that people in this country can express their views. We don't all agree with each other. And right now you really see the White House, for whatever reason, I think escalating, maybe seeking to create some made-for-TV moments. It's not clear. But I do think that there is a lot at stake here, as you've heard this morning.
Thank you. I want to ask each of the governors, this is a general question. How could each of the governors answer briefly how President Trump's policies, his assaults on the rule of law and his interjection of military force into California, how that would threaten your states, especially where Secretary Hagg has said that he would support that expansion? Mr. Walz, Governor?
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Lynch. Well, first of all, it's one of the federalism policy of this, especially when it comes to posse comitatus and the Insurrection Act. Governors are in charge. Our National Guard, as all of you know, serve in either Title 10 or Title 32 status under the role of governor. Right. And on all of these operations, the absolute pinnacle and the most critical piece is the coordination amongst them. And as a governor not being notified as local law enforcement, it creates a chaotic situation that they cannot operate as a joint unit. And governors are always there. We do it for floods. We do it for civil unrest. But doing it without causes immense danger, not citizens to, but to those very law enforcement officers who are then put in that chaotic situation.
Thank you. Governor Pritzker?
Local law enforcement are the ones who indicate to the governor or to their local officials who talk to the governor about their need for National Guard. And indeed, I've had that situation in the state of Illinois and called out the Guard when I needed to. I'm careful about when I do it, but again, when local law enforcement indicate that they want that backup or they need that support, we do it. Now, I have to say, when the President of the United States is calling out your National Guard over the top of local law enforcement saying that they don't need it, that they have things under control, it tends to have an inflaming effect on what's going on the ground, just when local law enforcement and officials are getting things under control. And I think that's what we saw in Los Angeles.
Governor Hochul?
Those actions absolutely undermine the sovereignty of individual states. States' governors are the commanders in chief of the National Guard. They know what to do. As you've heard from my colleagues, we have deployed them in a number of occasions. But undermining confidence in local law enforcement, you're basically saying that there's not a belief that the highly trained individuals of our municipal police departments, like Los Angeles and the city of New York, for example, can handle their jobs. I have more confidence in our law enforcement than perhaps the president does, and we ought to step back and say this is an overreach of epic proportions.
Thank you. Chair recognizes.
Thank you for your courtesy on the time. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Ms. Stefanik from New York.
Thank you. Governor Hochul, on your first day in office, you signed Executive Order 1. Is that correct?
I believe it is.
And you extended this executive order not once, not twice, but 3 times, most recently January 16th this year. Is that correct?
If that's what your facts show, I signed countless executive orders.
I would assume you'd know it's Executive Order 1. And this is a continuation of your predecessor's sanctuary state policies, correct? Is included in that.
I want to be sure we are defining sanctuary state properly.
I'll define it for you. It is the policy of the state that state officers or employees shall not disclose information to federal immigration authorities for the purpose of federal civil immigration enforcement. It goes on to say law enforcement officers may not use resources, equipment, or personnel for the purpose of detecting and apprehending any individual suspected or wanted for violating a civil immigration office. Law enforcement officers have no authority in the state of New York to take any policy action solely because the person is an undocumented alien. That's a quote in your executive orders that you extended. Now, do you know who Sakir Akan is?
I want to get back to the first part.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you know who Sakir Akan is?
I want to make sure you understand that this simply says that we will cooperate with ICE.
No, it does not say that. I read what it says, and let me talk to you about the results. Do you know who Sakir Akan is? You should, as the governor of New York State. Do you know?
Refresh my recollection.
He was an illegal migrant in New York. And do you know what crime he committed in addition to being here illegally?
No, I do not.
You do not? This was widely reported. He found a 15-year-old girl, threatened her with a metal pole, told her to get into the back seat of his car, he took her clothes off, and he violently raped her in Albany, New York. Do you know who Sebastian Zepeda Khalil is?
I'm sure you'll tell me there's many cases, whether they're
These are high-profile cases. Yes. New Yorkers know about them, and you don't. So let's talk about Sebastian Zepeda Khalil. Do you know who that is?
I don't have the specific details at my disposal, no.
Well, this is an illegal migrant in New York because of your sanctuary state policies. Do you know what crime he committed?
I'm not familiar at this moment.
I bet you're going to be familiar when I remind you. He found a sleeping woman on the subway, lit her on fire, and burned her alive. This is in Kathy Hochul's New York. And as I'm sure you are aware, and I'll remind you, that ICE issued an order to detain this violent criminal, but that was rejected by New York officials due to sanctuary state laws. Now, do you know who Raymond Rojas Basilio is?
I just want to say this. These crimes are horrific.
Because of your sanctuary state policies.
In all of these cases, we would work with ICE to remove them.
You did not in this case. They are walking on the streets because of your policies and your executive order that you signed 3 times. Now, Raymond Rojas Basilio, do you know who that is?
I'm telling you this. I will explain to you the policies of New York. We cooperate with, I know you're just trying to.
You do not. Specifically, ICE was told not to detain this individual, and he burned a woman alive on the New York subways in Kathy Hochul's New York. So I will keep on going. What about Raymond Rojas Basilio? Do you know who that is?
I'm going to tell you our overall policy, which will address all this.
I'll tell you who that is. He is an illegal who molested an 11-year-old in our state because, again, of your sanctuary state policies. This illegal was shielded from federal immigration enforcement and able to commit this heinous crime. And what about Wilson Castillo-Diaz? Do you know who that is?
I'm telling you this. We do cooperate fully with ICE in criminal prosecution. Our sanctuary
You're not advocating for these victims.
Only deal
this
with
is a 5-year-old who was raped on Long Island in Nassau County. You are not advocating on behalf of these victims. You are shielding illegals. Even in your opening statement, you prioritize putting illegals first.
That is not
Rapes of young girls, beatings of NYPD cops by illegals who are here under Kathy Hochul's failed policies, burning New Yorkers alive. This is Kathy Hochul's New York. It's one of the many reasons why you're hemorrhaging support from hardworking New York families.
These are horrific crimes, and they're heartbreaking.
They're horrific crimes that are committed on your watch. You signed this executive order on your first day in office. You signed it again and again this January. We deserve a governor who stands up for law-abiding New Yorkers, doesn't put illegals first, but actually puts New Yorkers first. I appreciate
Rather than going after the viral moment, I suggest you look at the facts.
I'm standing up for New Yorkers.
No.
Rather than addressing the illegals in New York, you are prioritizing your far-left sanctuary state policies, which you put in place with executive orders. Instead of advocating for victims, a 5-year-old who was raped,
with ICE.
you did not. They were released because of sanctuary state policies in New York State. No amount of words is going to clean up your failed record and these horrific crimes committed in sanctuary state that you created. And with that, I yield back.
Your representation, the facts, absolutely false.
Yields back.
Absolutely
Chair recognizes Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's be real. Since the start of the Trump administration, each day has been more nightmarish than the last. But in the past few days and weeks, we have seen a significant escalation of Trump's mass deportation agenda. On May 29th, a 9-year-old child and his father were reportedly detained in Torrance, California, and separated from one another by ICE. A 4th grader ripped from the only community he knows and from the arms of his father. We have kids who are afraid to go to school, afraid that ICE will grab them, and their families from school grounds, and afraid their parents will not be there when they get home. Schools are supposed to be safe havens for our children that foster learning and growth. Instead, the Trump administration is deliberately weaponizing them terrorizing children and families with its immigration policies and threatening more than 600,000 students, kids with detention and removal. President Trump has called for an end to birthright citizenship, a constitutional right recognized since the end of slavery. He has cut federal contracts that give 2-year-olds representation in immigration court. He has ripped the children who are immigrants and United States citizens from schools, their friends, their neighborhoods, and their homes. There is no other way to spin this. President Trump is waging a cruel and deliberate war against children. Ms. Perriman, do all children residing in the United States have a constitutional right to attend public schools regardless of immigration status?
They do.
Ms. Perriman, how is President Trump going further than past presidents in authorizing ICE to carry out enforcement activities in schools, hospitals, and places of worship?
Yes, I mean, this is what brought us to court on behalf of the Baptists and the Quakers and the Sikh communities and other religious communities that are having to challenge this. For more than 30 years, the country had a policy that prevented indiscriminate enforcement activities at what we call sensitive locations. That includes houses of worship, and it includes schools. We saw in the early days of this administration, the Department of Homeland Security rescind that policy and endanger all people, not just immigrants, but people who are seeking to engage in communal worship, people who are seeking to go to school, and to be present in other sensitive locations like hospitals.
Governor Walz, what does it mean for children in Minnesota if ICE comes to their classrooms?
Well, thank you, Congresswoman. Minnesota prioritizes education. We're proud of our education system. We're proud that when students come to school, they get a good meal, they have well-qualified teachers, and it's a place where it's safe. It's a safe place where they can learn. We prioritize it because our economy depends upon it, and it's the right thing to do. Disruptions at places like school, when ICE is free to operate in Minnesota within the laws, but to disrupt schools, to disrupt and come to those schools, not only the impact to that individual student, but to the entire learning environment in those schools are disrupted by it. And again, we agree with everyone here, those committing crimes is where we need to focus, but being on campuses in elementary schools is not getting at that.
Thank you. Governor Pritzker, when ICE detains and arrests parents as they drop off kids at school, how does this affect educational outcomes?
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Let me begin by saying that, as you may know, under President Trump, ICE showed up in Chicago nearly immediately and began terrorizing our neighborhoods, our schools, and parents. Indeed, many parents felt like they needed to go into hiding, even though their children needed to go to school every day. And so disrupting that environment, frankly, not just for the children, but for the parents and for teachers and the entire school community, it is something that, we believe in Illinois in educating all of our kids, making sure that they get what they need in our public schools. In fact, we've invested significantly in making sure the results have been very good. 8th graders in Illinois rank 2nd in reading in the entire country. 8th graders in Illinois rank 5th in the country in mathematics. And it's because we have a safe environment, but not when Tom Homan brings Dr. Phil with the overreach of force with ICE to disrupt our education system, and particularly our elementary schools.
Thank you. Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair recognizes the Majority Whip, Mr. Emmer from Minnesota.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome back to Washington, Governor. I'm going to run through a series of facts before I get to my questions, so let's get started. Governor Walz, you signed the Health and Human Services Omnibus Bill into law in May of 2023. That bill expanded Minnesota Care to provide free health care to illegal aliens. You signed the Higher Education Omnibus Bill into law in May of 2023. That bill allows illegals to have their college tuition paid for by the state. You signed the Driver's License for All Act into law in March of 2023, and that bill allows illegals to receive driver's licenses. So, you claim you're not a sanctuary state. You just provide free health care, free college, and driver's licenses to illegal aliens. One reason you're here testifying before us today is because you refuse to cooperate with ICE. While states like Florida and Virginia empower their law enforcement to detain and remove criminal illegal aliens, you, sir, have done just the opposite. Your Attorney General is directing law enforcement to ignore ICE immigration detainers. Do you agree with the Attorney General's guidance?
Well, Congressman, it's good to see you again, and thank you for being here. First, I would say, as my job as governor of Minnesota is to make Minnesota the best state in the nation.
Do you agree with the Attorney General's guidance?
Congressman, what I would say on this is that Minnesota follows all law. I would say
it's a very easy question. And again, if you claim you're not a sanctuary state, you just claim that you support policies. You're not a sanctuary state, but you support policies that prevent ICE from doing their job.
Congressman,
isn't that right?
That is incorrect, Congressman. We follow the same laws when you were in the Minnesota House. The law has not changed,
If you'll allow me, I've got limited time. Well, that's what you tweeted, by the way, sir. And on May 23rd, 2018, you tweeted, quote, "I support policies that keep law enforcement from enforcing federal laws," close quote. On May 17th, just this spring, at the University of Minnesota Law School's commencement ceremony, you said, quote, "Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets." When you said the words modern-day Gestapo, you were referring to ICE agents. Gestapo, by the way, sir, was the official secret police of Hitler's Nazi Germany. So you're calling ICE agents modern-day Nazis. Given the attacks on ICE agents that took place in Los Angeles over the weekend, don't you regard your dangerous inflammatory rhetoric as a problem?
The questions do you want me to answer first?
So, sir, it saddens me that you refuse to express regret from comparing ICE to Nazis. ICE agents are brave Americans who get up every morning, leave their families, and put their lives in harm's way to protect our country, sir. You, at the very least, owe an apology to these dedicated public servants. I will say, sir, inflammatory rhetoric such as yours and the other governors on this panel is responsible for putting a target on the back of every ICE agent who is risking their life to protect our communities. Minnesota is all too familiar, by the way, with the chaos that ensues when you refuse to work with law enforcement to enforce the law. In May 2020, looting, acts of violence, and arson occurred on your watch in Minneapolis after you refused to bring in the National Guard. Governor, your agenda is clear: free health care, free college and driver's licenses for illegals while handcuffing law enforcement when they're trying to protect our citizens and their communities. If you think that's not a sanctuary state, you shouldn't be governor. By turning Minnesota into a magnet for illegals, you have opened up our communities to dangerous criminals, including known terrorists, gang members, murderers, and child predators. You have sent a resounding message that if you're a hardworking, law-abiding citizen of Minnesota, your safety and well-being are not the priorities of Tim Walz and his administration. But if you're coming to our state illegally, you're not only welcome with open arms, you're entitled to free stuff on the taxpayer's dime. This is absolutely disgraceful. Governor Walz, your sanctuary state agenda has been defined by your utter failure. You have failed to enforce the rule of law. You have failed to uphold our national sovereignty. And most importantly, you have failed the people of Minnesota. The time for radical sanctuary state policy, sir, is over. The voters made that clear last November when they elected President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. You remember him, don't you? Governor, the time for real leaders and real leadership is now. And with that, sir, actually, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to introduce into the record the governor's tweet that I referenced from May 23rd, 2018, which makes it clear his hatred for federal law enforcement. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Chair recognizes Mr. Mfume.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I have a unanimous consent request, and I'd like to present both of those to you at the same time.
Proceed.
Okay. I ask unanimous consent that we enter into the record an article from The Hill of the 8th day of June. Latinos for Trump co-founder blast inhumane immigration arrest.
Without objection, to order.
Thank you, sir. And the second one is from the Independent of May the 28th. Trump ordered a critically ill 4-year-old Mexican girl to leave the country. Experts say she could die in days. I ask unanimous consent.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes Mr. Kristamorte from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Governor Pritzker, when it comes to immigration, you've been clear that Illinois follows the law. I'd like to go into this issue just a little further. First, there's been a lot of misinformation about the Illinois Trust Act. As you know, this is the 2017 law signed by then Republican Governor Bruce Rauner, which requires state agencies to cooperate with ICE when it presents a criminal arrest warrant for an individual, correct?
Congressman, yes, that's correct.
And just to be clear, the Illinois State Police, the Department of Corrections, and other Illinois agencies must cooperate with ICE when they present a criminal arrest warrant, correct?
And do every single time.
This is Illinois law.
Yes,
Donald Trump may not like state law, as we are seeing in California, but what Donald Trump likes is irrelevant. The law is the law. The Wall Street Journal reports that ICE's recent raids in California, including at a Home Depot in the LA area, were organized because the administration was falling way short of its cruel goal of deporting thousands of people per day. Politico said this is, quote, the standoff that Trump wanted. There's another reason why Trump has provoked the current situation in California. He doesn't want to talk about what he calls the big, beautiful bill and what I call the large, lousy law. So let's talk about what Trump doesn't want to discuss. What Trump doesn't want to discuss is that his large, lousy law cuts $625 billion in Medicaid, a program that insures millions of Americans. Governor Walz, in a press release on Medicaid cuts, you said, quote, the victims of these cuts will be families, children, veterans, rural Americans, and pregnant moms. That's what you said, right?
That's correct, Congressman.
And Governor Hochul, in a recent op-ed, you wrote, even if you don't rely on Medicaid, these cuts affect you. Because when millions lose coverage, hospitals and other vital healthcare institutions lose funding. And that strains the entire system. That's what you wrote, right?
That is correct, sir.
Governor Pritzker, cuts in the large, lousy law are going to leave upwards of 700,000 Illinoisans without health insurance. Isn't that correct?
Yes, people will die.
Trump's large, lousy law adds trillions to the national debt as well, which could force $500 billion in automatic cuts to Medicare, in addition to the cuts in Medicaid that we just referred to. And of course, Medicare is a program that every senior relies on. Let me turn to my final topic. Governor Pritzker, President Trump has called Illinois, quote, a poorly run state. But the truth, of course, is the opposite. Governor, Illinois has had 7 consecutive balanced budgets, right?
That's correct, Congressman.
And our credit rating has been raised 9 times in the last 6 years, correct?
After 21 downgrades under Republican and others.
And it now stands at an A rating, right?
It does.
In contrast, under President Trump, every credit agency has downgraded America's credit rating below the top level, the first time in history that's happened. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
Trump and others claim the federal government props up Illinois. But in reality, we're one of 13 states in the country that actually give more tax revenue to Washington, D.C. than we receive in return. Now, let me turn to some of the reasons why Illinois is a donor state and not a taker state. Illinois has a $1.1 trillion economy. We produce the most soybeans in America, and we're the #2 producer of corn, right?
That is correct.
We're the #2 manufacturing state in the country.
We are.
And we're the #2 destination for corporate expansions and relocations, right?
And Chicago is #1.
Thanks to you, we have the world's first quantum and microelectronics park, correct?
That's right.
And we're ranked top in the Midwest for workforce development, correct?
Yes, we are.
And startups?
That's right.
Illinois is the heart and soul of America, Governor. It's where the cell phone was invented, was home to the first McDonald's, and was the home of amazing leaders, Lincoln, Reagan, Obama, Grant, even Superman, and yes, the Pope. And here's a picture of the Pope wearing a Chicago White Sox cap. The next Pope's going to be a Cubs fan.
There you go.
Illinois has terrific jobs, people, and pizza. Some may even say that God is on our side, Governor. I'm proud to be from Peoria. I'll always stand up for Illinois, loud and proud. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Hochul, third paragraph, second sentence in your written testimony, you said New York State cooperates with U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement in criminal cases. Governor, who's Jesus Romero Hernandez?
Thank you. I want to reaffirm that we do cooperate in cases where...
That wasn't the question. I just read your statement. I can read your statement. Who is Jesus Romero Hernandez?
I don't have the details on every single person in a state of 20 million people.
I understand, but this guy's a citizen of Mexico, deported 7 times, came to your state, assaulted one of your residents with a machete, choked a police officer, then when he was in custody, assaulted a corrections officer. ICE finds out this guy is in your state's custody, and they send you a detainer. You're familiar with a detainer, right?
Yes, I am.
Notice of action immigration detainer to Tompkins County Jail from Syracuse Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Section 1, they check a couple boxes. The first one they check is a final order of removal against the alien has taken place. That means a court has said this guy needs to go. This machete-wielding, cop-choking, corrections officer assaulting guy needs to go. Then they also check another box and they say biometric confirmation of who this individual is, this alien's identity. So they got the right guy and a court has said he needs to go. Any idea what Tompkins County Jail decided to do with that detainer order?
I will tell you this, the state of...
It's a specific question.
No,
what did Tompkins County do?
The descriptions you have put forth are absolutely chilling and disturbing and reprehensible to all of us. My job is to protect the people of New York.
Is why I'm asking the question. What did Tompkins County do?
What I have responsibility for
I will tell you, since you're not going to answer.
Courts,
we cannot and will not hold Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah.
We can't keep the machete guy who had choked a police officer and assaulted a corrections officer. We can't keep him. In fact, we have the back and forth from Tompkins County and ICE on January 28th of this year, 8:56 p.m., Tompkins County tells ICE, we're not going to hold this guy. 7 minutes later, ICE responds back, we will be there to take custody this evening. 24 minutes later, Thompson County reiterates, we're not going to have him. We're not going to turn him over. 10:45. ICE arrives at the jail. 1 hour and 18 minutes later, and guess what? Mr. Hernandez is not there. They couldn't wait 1 hour and 18 minutes for a guy who assaulted one of your residents with a machete, choked a police officer, and then when in custody, assaulted corrections officers. That is sanctuary policy in a nutshell, and that is what your state supports, and so do these other governors. That is what is so wrong, why the American people hate this concept.
You're conflating what the state of New York does is I control state police and prisons. We have turned over 1,300 people.
So you disagree with it?
We turn over 1,300 people.
Did the sheriff make the wrong call?
Those are local policies that we would not have done in the state of New York. State of New York, that is a local decision. So you're saying the sheriff's wrong?
I
would say this, if it happened in a state prison, we have already turned over 1,300 people.
Sheriff in Tompkins County, a Democrat or Republican, Governor?
There have been times, excuse me.
The sheriff in Thompson County, a Democrat or Republican?
Excuse me. There have been times.
I ask the questions, you give the answers.
I'm asking
is he a Democrat or Republican?
For a second.
You know?
I'm asking for this moment to explain that I'm sometimes waiting for ICE to come pick up people.
Is he a Democrat or Republican, and do you agree with the actions he took? Do you agree with the actions he took? How about that question?
They are in conflict with what the state of New York would do.
Well, maybe they're scared. By the way, he is a Democrat sheriff. Maybe the county guys are a little scared because you said this. I'm quoting from, it looks like the New York Times. We all know you can trust them. This is last month, May 25th. You said we have some counties that are renegade counties and work with ICE. Maybe they're nervous of being called a renegade county by their governor. So the Democrat sheriff says we're not going to keep the machete-wielding, cop-choking corrections officer.
President Trump is now at a bill signing ceremony at the White House. Let's tune in.
Congratulations. This is a very, very important thing. Thank you very much, everybody. This is a very important thing we're going to be discussing. Please sit down. Thank you very much. This is good news indeed. People said it couldn't be done. You got it done. I just have to sign, right? That's very good. This is really something. And it has to do with the California Auto Regulation, CRA. It's been a disaster for this country. And I want to thank everybody for being here. We officially rescue the U.S. auto industry from destruction by terminating the California electric vehicle mandate once and for all. They said it couldn't be done, but boy, it's had us tied up in knots for years. And they'd pass these crazy rules in California, and it would be 17 states would go by them. The automakers didn't know what to do because they're really building cars for two countries. When you have 17 states, you're building cars for two countries. And I want to congratulate you all, the Senate, the House, the whole thing. It's incredible. I was going to sign a executive order and give it a shot. But the one good thing with this, number one, it holds up forever. And number two, unless somebody votes it out, they'll never do that. And it's just so much better, huh? It's so much better. That's so great. Very proud of you. We're joined today by the great Speaker of the House. I think he's going to go down as a great Speaker of the House, too. I may be wrong. I may be wrong. Who knows? Who the hell knows? I think he is. And he's doing something, the only thing I would say is more important than this one, and I'll tell you what, it's almost close. That's how big this is today. But the great, big, beautiful, I added the word great, you know, I used the word. The great, big, beautiful bill, it's going to be one of the most, I said it this morning to a group, I think it's the most important, one of the most important pieces of legislation ever signed, ever approved. So it's going to be something very special. Thank you very much. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, thank you. Secretary Sean Duffy, and they had a problem in India today, and you're on that. Sean's doing a tremendous job. Secretary Chris Wright, everybody said you'd never be able to get him. He's the most talented man, they say, in the oil and gas industry. I'll let you know in about 2 years if that's true. Well, Doug Burgum, you know, I wanted Doug Burgum to head up energy because he was so successful in North Dakota. He's governor. And he said, sir, there's one person who's much better than me. I said, who? They said, Chris Wright. I said, who the hell is Chris Wright? I had no idea. Now everyone knows Chris Wright. He's going to be more famous than me. But he said, there's a guy named Chris Wright, and if we could get him, he'd be better than I am, sir. And if you know Doug, Doug's not here, is he? If you knew Doug, he's always working someplace. But if you knew Doug, you'd know that he doesn't say that often. And he did. And Chris, you're doing great. But I don't like the oil prices have gone up just a little bit over the last few days. I was going to call it just really start screaming at you. Are we okay? Nothing wrong, right? It's going to keep going down a little bit, right? Because we have inflation under control perfectly. You probably saw the records. Everyone's on television saying, what's going on here? Trump has proven to be right. You know, all of these things. We've taken in $88 billion in tariffs in 2 months. $88 billion with no inflation. And if we're smart, there won't be. Now, we'd like to get this guy to lower interest rates because, you know, if he doesn't, we have to pay. We have a lot of short-term debt. Obama gave it to us originally, and Biden carried it on. They like short-term. I like long-term cheap debt. But a lot of the debt comes through because Biden, well, he didn't do it. I'm sure he didn't know anything about it. But somebody approved short-term debt. It's all over the place. And it comes due starting very soon. And if we would lower the interest rates by 1 point, we'd pay about 1 point less. That's $300 billion a year. Can you believe it? 1 point. If he'd lower it by 2 points, we'd pay $600 billion a year less. That's for years, 10 years, 12 years, whatever we make it. But we can't get this guy to do it. And the fake news is saying, oh, if you fired him, it would be so bad. It would be so bad. I don't know why it would be so bad, but I'm not going to fire him. I just want him to, we call him Too Late, right? Too Late is his nickname, like Too Tall Jones. He was too tall, T-O-O. And I just say this because we want to get rid of inflation, and we have. But we're going to be paying more for debt. And all he has to do is lower it. Europe's done 10 lowerings. We've done none. And nobody understands it. Actually, today when the numbers came out, they were so good. You saw yesterday's numbers, incredible. No inflation. Today's numbers. Today just came out, same thing, no inflation. They're all shocked. All these guys are watching from business, CNBC, and all of these different networks. Maria Bartiromo actually got it right. She's been getting it right for a long time, that one. I hope she's appreciated. And Joe Kiernan's been very good at CNBC, I must tell you, but other people aren't so good. But I will say that they can't believe what's happening. But if I could, because we can discuss, we get a lot of press, we get a lot of cameras rolling right now. Not that I like doing it, because I don't. But if we cut our interest by 1 point, for years, we save $300 billion. If we cut it by 2 points, we save, because it's pretty equivalent. We're going to spend $600 billion a year, $600 billion, because of one numbskull that sits here. I don't see enough reason to cut the rates now. And the problem he's got is that, and I explained to him, look, if inflation went up, cut your rates now. There's no inflation. We got it down. We got prices down. We got gasoline down. And you'll keep it going down. But gasoline's down. We drill, it's drill, baby, drill. That's why it's going down. But all that. But think of it. I said to him, he was in my office a couple of days ago. I said, if you think there's inflation, let's find out. Because I think we're going to keep it down. I think gasoline's going to be so far down. Oil, energy, is so much energy. We have so much energy, we don't know what to do with it. But let's say there was inflation in a year from now. Raise your rates. I don't mind. Raise your rates. I'm all for it. I'll be calling you. He'll be too late for that too. But raise your rates. You don't have to keep them up here. If it's going to go up, I'm okay with you raising, but it's down. And we're going out to financing. And I may have to force something. Somebody said, who's the genius that thought of that? I said, it's me. Unlike Biden, I stay awake at night thinking about how to save our country. He was much better at sleeping than me. He could sleep on a beach. He could sleep on a beach with cameras rolling. I can't do that. But I had an idea. I gave it. They said, this is really, we'll go short term for a year. Let this guy get out of office. Somebody will come in, cut it a couple of points, and we'll save ourselves $7, $8, maybe even $900 billion a year. What is he doing? Why doesn't he lower these rates? And with that, we'll get on to the California standard, which is a disaster, okay? So, Chris Wright, you're going to get the numbers down. Thank you very much. Lee Zeldin, one of the most important men in this room. He's the man. I get nervous when I talk to him. He's doing a great job. Nuclear, I say, okay, you can take 2 weeks for that approval. It used to take 20 years, then they wouldn't approve it. now I say, Lee, nuclear, I'll give you 2 weeks for an approval. A coal-fired plant, you only get a couple of days. And oil and gas will give you a week, okay? Something like that. But he's doing it so fast, and we have so many plants being built right now. It's so beautiful to see. And one of the reasons they're coming here is because they have to produce tremendous, especially the AI, they have to produce beyond believable amounts of electricity. And they're doing, I said to them, I think this was more or less my idea. They didn't have the idea only because they didn't think a thing like this was possible. I said, as you build your plant, you're going to become a utility. And you're going to build a separate plant right alongside of it. You're going to build it. You're going to build a plant that produces electricity. And you'll produce it through natural gas, coal, nuclear. We don't want to produce it through wind because we don't feel like ruining 50 miles of beautiful plains and beautiful vistas. And but we want to produce it. You know, interestingly, China's opening up a coal plant every single week. But now I'm finding out it might be 2 plants every single week. And, you know, usually that's a good gauge. If they're using coal, I guess we're supposed to use coal. And, you know, we went to a coal standard. And not that you have to use coal. You're going to use whatever's best. I want to introduce also Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso, who's a tremendous guy, doctor. Okay? And he is a tremendous guy, tremendously talented doctor. When I have a medical situation for the country, for myself, I haven't used him, but I might have to. Maybe I'll do that. If it's serious enough, I think I'd probably do that. But he's a tremendously talented gentleman who happens to be a senator and one that's very respected. Chairwoman Shelley Moore Capito, and congratulations. I just endorsed your son. Did you know that? I endorsed your son. I endorsed your son, who's running in West Virginia, and he's great. In fact, he's all Trump all the time. I think much more so than you, actually. If you want. You were his largest impediment. No, I'm only kidding. He's all Trump all the time, and he's going to win big, and so congratulate him. Okay, he's really been fantastic. So many people have told me. Thank you. And House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who's a brave man. He went through hell. Steve went through hell. And we have a lot of other people here that I won't be able to because they don't have your name down, and I'm looking, and I see people's names. I'll do a couple of you, but thanks as well to Mark Wayne Mullen, Senator. Mark Wayne, thank you. Stand up, Mark Wayne. Don't fight him. He's a serious fighter in a lot of ways, and he's a great guy, too. Thank you, Mark Wayne. Deb Fisher. Deb? Thank you, Deb. Good. Pete Ricketts, who's going to do very well in the upcoming election. Thank you. Thank you, Pete. John Husted, who's really moving along in Ohio. John, good luck. You're going to do well. All endorsed people. John Curtis, who's doing terrifically. John, thank you. Good job. They all say excellent. What can I tell you? Good job. And Bernie Moreno, who won a race that was not winnable. They all said it's not winnable. He won in Ohio. They said, you can't win that race. It's a waste of time. You're just wasting your time. Right, Bernie? Wasn't a waste of time, was it? Huh? And he won by like 5 points, too. Won by a lot. Along with Representatives Kevin Kiley, Vince Fong, Jay Obernolte, Doug Lamaffer, Darrell Issa. Where's Darrell? I haven't seen you in such a long time. Look at you. How good you look, huh? Good when you have those big margins. It's easier. John Joyce, great guy. John, thank you. Thank you, John. Dusty Johnson, Morgan Griffith, Troy Balderson. Troy from a place called Ohio. And he played very cute at one time, but then he got, boy, I'll tell you, he's become a good politician. Where is Troy now? Where I haven't seen him used for years. I endorsed you early when he was early and younger, but you still look young, and you've done fantastically good. Good work, really good work. Claudia Tenney, New York. Claudia, thank you, Claudia. John James. John James. I don't know. You know, he's running for governor, but I'm not sure I'm happy about that, John. Do we have somebody good to take your seat? Because otherwise we're not letting him run for governor. We can't. You have somebody good, right? Okay. As long as you like him, they'll win. Tracy Mann. Tracy, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Michael Baumgartner. Michael. Thank you, Michael. Good job. David Rouser. Thank you. Glenn Grothman. Hi, Glenn. Thank you very much, Glenn. Brett Guthrie. Brett. Thank you, Brett. Rudy Yackham. Thank you. Thank you, Rudy. And I want to thank you all. And there's some additional people in the room, but we have to get back to this. Is like so big. This is a big one. Under the previous administration, the previous administration, I could go point after point, everything they did, open borders, men playing in women's sports, transgender for everybody, let's go transgender. What a group of people you had over there. They must have hated our country. Under the previous administration, the federal government gave left-wing radicals in California dictatorial powers to control the future of the entire car industry all over the country, all over the world, actually. Because they have to build a car. They can't build 19 different cars called the same thing. And really, it was all over the world what was happening. They approved Governor Gavin Newsom's ridiculous plan to impose a 100% ban on all new gas-powered cars within a very short period of time. Think of this. You couldn't buy any other car except an electric-powered car. And in California, they have blackouts and brownouts. They don't have enough electricity right now to do the job. And countrywide, you'd have to spend $4 trillion to build the firing plants, to be able to, they go to firing, they call them a lot of things, charging plants, firing plants. $4 trillion you'd have to spend. In the Midwest, they built 9 of them. 9 individual, it's like a pump, just like a pump, except instead of gas, electricity comes out. They built 8 of them. $9 billion they spent for 8 little hoses, $9 billion. Now, I'm sure they could have done it for about, 1/1000th of that, but even if they did, it's unaffordable. They approved Governor Gavin's ridiculous, is so ridiculous. By the way, if I didn't bring the military in, Los Angeles would be burning down right now. It'd be burning just like his damn houses burned down because he didn't have the water that he should have had. He had so much water. They have so much water. We had to send in the military to free up the water. And we did that right after the fires. We told them to do it in the first term. But just like that ridiculous plan, this is a plan to ban, think of it, a plan to ban 100, and they call it the 100% ban on all new gas-powered cars and abolish 75% of the gas-powered trucks. 75%. The trucking industry saw me. They said, sir, it doesn't work. Number one, the trucks are so heavy. They're 2.5 times heavier than a diesel-powered truck. So one of the big truckers owns 28,000 trucks, big company, tremendous company. He said, I go out of business immediately. I'm not going to play games. He said, did you explain these things to the government officials? Like the truck weighs 2.5 times more than a regular truck, a gasoline-powered diesel. And he said, based on that, we have to rebuild every bridge in the United States of America because it wasn't designed to hold cars and trucks that heavy because the batteries are very heavy. They're, probably lead, but they have a lot of things in those batteries that weigh a lot. But it's 2.5 times. It's a simple number, 2.5 times. And if you want to do this, you have to spend trillions and trillions of dollars on rebuilding every bridge in the United States, and I guess throughout the world, because they do follow us. And the big rig buses and even cement trucks, they want to abolish certain categories of truck, but they want to go 75% of all of these trucks have to be abolished almost immediately. I mean, the time is just crazy. And they don't go far. Another little problem. With a tank of diesel, you can go from New York to Los Angeles if you want to go to Los Angeles right now. But New York to Los Angeles, and you can go back a little bit. With the electric truck, you'll stop approximately 6 times. Enjoy your stop. And the truckers saw me, and I said, did you just explain this? Because this is like, you know, if you explain it, if a person's reasonable for that, he said, we explained it, they didn't care. They said, we're going all electric. They can't be stupid, because anybody that can cheat on elections like them is not a stupid person. But they must hate our country. But I said to this big trucker, he said, sir, I've been buying trucks my whole damn life. He's a rough guy, smart guy. He said, I got thousands of them. I've been buying them for 50 years. And every single year they got better. They got more efficient, they got bigger, they got stronger. I build apartments in my trucks now for the drivers. I said, what's an apartment? That's on the cab, they put this in. And sir, I know you like luxury, but you wouldn't mind living in one of these. I said, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. I mean, it doesn't sound too appealing, but I said, so what's the problem? He said, so I noticed one thing. For 50 years, every single year, one thing happened. They got better. They got stronger. They got more efficient. They got faster. They could carry any load. If we went to this standard, we'd go back beyond 50 years. They wouldn't go as far as a truck from 50 years ago. It would be too heavy and have all the other problems. He said, we'd be going backwards. We'd be taking a trucking industry, would be starting all over. But actually, it would be worse because it was better 50 years ago than. So I said, what are you going to do if I don't win this election? This was before the election. He said, you don't win the election, I'm going to close up my business because I'm not going to lose he said, I'm not going to lose my ass. I know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be a catastrophe. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. They're making you buy stuff that doesn't work. It's no good. It doesn't work. And I'm all for electric. If you want to buy electric, you can buy electric. Cars are great. If you buy the right ones, cars are great. And you should be given the option, buy the electric car, buy a gasoline-powered car, buy a hybrid. Probably not hydrogen, because hydrogen has a tendency that when it blows up, you're gonzo. It's over. They find you 75 yards down the road, you know. Where is he? Well, I think that's him, but I'm not sure. So, you know, they said, we think we can solve the problem. I said, that's not good enough when they think. No, it sounds like it's quite severe. If it doesn't work, Steve, it'll work most of the time, but if it doesn't, it's over. It'll make your accident look like peanuts compared. You wouldn't be around, I'll tell you, because it's pretty bad. But some people like it. I don't know. Let's see what happens. But I would say it's off to a bad start. But because of the size of California's population and the fact that 17 other states follow California, that's the problem. 17 other states follow California. They have the most ridiculous laws I've ever seen for a lot of things. This is just cars, but and trucks and they have a lot of them for other things. But we have, it's called the California Car Standards. And this horrible scheme would effectively abolish the internal combustion engine, which most people prefer. Like so far, I'd say about 90%. In fact, General Motors announced yesterday they're going to spend about $6 billion because of tariffs and maybe because of my election on November 5th. But because of tariffs, I think, more than anything, they're all coming back. They're coming back from other countries that took them 25, 30 years ago. They're all coming back. We have now almost $15 trillion. They had almost nothing last year, and the year before, they have very, very little. Nobody wanted to be back here. Nobody wanted to come to our country anymore. because we were like stupid people. We looked like stupid people. We were laughed at all over the world. Now we're not laughed at anymore, I can tell you that. But they wanted to shatter our domestic supply chains and literally grind civilization to a halt. We would have gone so far back. It's hard to believe, actually. Hard to believe when you don't have enough electricity to give a person a little air conditioning in the summer, and now they want you to take electricity and fire up all these cars. But we're not going to let that happen. Meanwhile, all of the auto jobs would be shipped to China because they're very strong on electric. And it lives off an estimated 200,000 American auto workers would be destroyed. It's one of the reasons I did so well with the United Auto Workers. And now I'm really doing well with them. I did phenomenally with them. No Republican ever got any numbers like I got. And the Teamsters, too. Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters. These guys, they like Trump because I produce jobs. They know that. Everybody knew that the auto workers knew better than anybody how good the tariffs were. And the head of the auto breakers, I don't know him at all, but he didn't like me at all. Now he's going around saying, this guy's unbelievable. He was very nice to me the last few months. During the campaign, no, but if I've proven, I've proven it. I've done what I said I was going to do, and we've brought back tremendous numbers of jobs. And you're having auto plants built all over the country, all over. There's never seen anything like that. They're leaving from Mexico. They're leaving from Canada. They're leaving from other parts of the world. If they want a Mercedes-Benz, you're going to have it made here. It's okay to have a Mercedes, but they're going to make it here. Otherwise, they're going to pay a very big tariff. They already are. That's one of the reasons we have $88 billion. It's a lot of money. But that's peanuts compared to what we're going to be making in another few months. They haven't even kicked in yet. But we're not going to let any of these bad things happen, these stupid projections that I've been reading about for the last 6 months. I think these people are either corrupt or really dumb. And they're supposed to be economists. In the campaign, I promised to end this disaster. And today, our Republican majorities in Congress have delivered. And I don't know, I can't imagine. It's so obvious. It's so good. Did we get any Democrat votes? Did we get one? Two? Who? 35. Yes, sir. I think that's great. I think that's great. You got 35 Democrats. 35, yes, sir. I think that's great. That, as far as I'm concerned, one in the Senate. On something that's so good. But who is the one? Well, I shouldn't have asked. I congratulate her. I don't care. I think it's great. It's very interesting. Why did I ask that question, Mr. Speaker? But in a few moments, I'll sign 3 pieces of legislation that will kill, totally kill. You can't do anything about it. They can't take us to court. They can't do any of the things they can do with the executive orders. And it's permanent. I'll sign 3 pieces of legislation that will kill the California mandates forever, and they're never coming back. Now, the auto companies are the most happy because now they're going to be designing and building one auto. It will be much cheaper. It's a much less expensive. They were showing me, one of the most respected people was showing me that to save a little, like a half a glass of fuel, cost them thousands of dollars with new computers and stop it. The engine has to stop and then turn on and blah, blah, blah. And I said, does it work as well? No, it's terrible. It's terrible. And that's to save a little bit of fuel, this much fuel that Chris Wright can produce with one extra little oil well someplace, right? One little, a small one, a very small one. But think of it. Your cars are going to cost you $3,000, $4,000 less, and you're going to have what you want. And again, you can get any car you want. You can get electric. A lot of people love the electric. They like Tesla. So do I, in all fairness. I like Tesla. And I like others, too. But I also like combustion engines. And, there are reasons for a lot of things. When I was in Iowa, we had an unbelievable victory, if you remember. Remember? That was nice. You won by, so much. Nobody even talked about anything else, but that was a great victory. But it was unbelievably cold that night, and I was going to watch my victory in the area where I was going to make a speech, and the whole place was littered with cars. I said, what happened? They were electric cars, and they don't work in cold. I said, I didn't know that. And they don't work in extreme heat either. Other than that, they're wonderful. But if you're in a cold climate, how do you do that? But they're electric cars, and I noticed that, and then I didn't pay much attention because we won by about 65 points. So I was more interested in that. But I do remember that scene. I said, what the hell is going on over here? This historic action will also help us reduce inflation and bring down the price of automobiles and electricity very, very substantially. We're building massive electricity right now. It's already started because of that guy right there, Lee Zeldin. By far the most important man in the room, Mr. Speaker. Stand up, Lee. He blows you guys away, John. He blows the politicians away. I'm sorry right now. He's a great politician. He almost won for governor in New York, which is just missed by a few points. And that was another race that was not winnable, but you almost got it. But I think what you're doing now is even bigger if you want to know the truth. I think it's actually more important if you can believe that. Under the previous regime, car prices skyrocketed as a direct result of the mandates. These mandates, this nonsense that you had to do. And there's so many other rules and regulations that the car companies who are here today appreciate that. And Susie Wiles is here today. Stand up, Susie. Most incredible woman. Most powerful woman in the world, they say. She's the most powerful. She was rated the most powerful woman in the world. Susie Wiles, one phone call and a nation is destroyed. She could destroy 5 nations with 5 calls, and she's doing a great job. More importantly, right? Doing a great job. Nobody like Energy prices would likewise soar as the radical left forced more electric vehicles onto the grid while blocking approvals for new power plants. They want to block the approvals. They want you to have a car with electric, but they block the production of the juice that runs the cars, and all of them, all forms of cars. It's just the craziest thing. We're in a different sphere now. We're in a whole different planet right now. The result would be rolling blackouts and a collapse of our power systems. We'd have a total collapse. You couldn't do it. You couldn't even do it. Think of it, they're forcing you to do something, and they want you to do boats also. I assume boats are being covered by this, and boats, they want you to go all electric, and the batteries are so heavy, the damn boat practically doesn't float. I used to have a lot of fun talking about that one on the tours. We'd talk about it. And I said, what would happen if the boat sank? Because we went to North Carolina, South Carolina. We visited boat factories. Unbelievable guys. And they said, sir, we have one problem. They're forcing us to go electric for the boat. I said, how's it going to work? The boat will not float, sir. It's so heavy. And it won't go fast, and lots of other. And I did ask him a question, because I have a lot of background. My uncle was a big shot at MIT, the smartest guy. He never had a smarter guy. And I guess I have a little of that. My first question was, what would happen if the boat sank? Do you get electrocuted? Remember I said that? And I used to be decimated by these people back here, right? I used to be decimated. They'd say, what kind of a crazy question is that? So I'm actually serious. What happens if you're an electric boat and the boat is going down? You're in trouble, Susie. And I used to say, remember, I'd get decimated. The audience loved it, but the press would laugh at it. I said, so if I have my choice of going down or jumping 5 or 6 yards away from the boat, but there's a shark there, what do I do? You know what I said? I'd rather be electrocuted. I said, I'll take electrocution every single day. But actually, he said, nobody's ever asked me that question, sir. He makes boats. Nobody ever asked me that question. This is really an unusual question. He said, and honestly, I don't have the answer. He wasn't able to. I said, don't worry about it. If I win, you won't have to worry about it. But today we're saving California, and we're saving our entire country from a disaster. Your cars are going to be thousands of dollars less money. And even the ones that, if you buy electric, we're not going to make you do certain things that are just a waste of money and just time-consuming waste of money. They make you do things that are no good for anybody, make the car worse, and make it much more expensive. Over the past 5 months, our administration and Republicans in Congress have fought for the American auto worker and for Teamsters and for, by the way, right to work. We have them all. We have, we just call them just workers. We fought for workers like no one has ever fought before. I understand that. It's why we won. We won with workers. We won with young people. I just saw with TikTok, I was #1 on TikTok in its history. Can you believe that? So I guess I like TikTok. That's why they're saying, are you saving? And we probably will save TikTok, actually. But on my first day in office, I ended the Green New Scam and abolished the EV mandate at the federal level. We abolished it, which is basically that everybody will be driving an electric car within a very short period of time. Now I know why Elon doesn't like me so much, which he does, actually. He does. And he never had a problem. It's very interesting. This is not something new. This has been there from day one, Speaker, right? We're going to abolish the EV mandate. And Elon still endorsed me because, honestly, he never, ever spoke to me about that. And I used to say, I'm amazed that he's endorsing me because that can't be good for him. I'm abolishing the EV mandate. And I once asked him about it. You never talked to me about that. He said, well, as long as it's happening to everybody, I'll be able to compete. It was a very interesting answer. I thought it was a very honest answer, to be honest with you. And I talked about it, that incredible, you would have thought he would have been, from day one, you got to make sure you don't do the EV mandate, the abolishing, and never did. Very honest in that sense. And he did say to me, I actually asked him because it was like really strange how I'm with him. He's very, a friend of mine, and he makes electric cars, and we're saying you're not going to be able to make electric cars, or you're not going to be forced to make all of those cars. You can make them, but it'll be by the market, judged by the market. And that's what he said. He said, as long as I'm on the same plane as everybody else, we're going to do good. We make a better product. I said, that's very cool. It's very cool. That was my answer. After that, he got a little bit strange, but I don't know why, over much smaller things than that. As part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, we'll also further slash the funding for the Green New Scam. As you know, it's the greatest scam in history, saving American taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. The windmills are killing our country, by the way. The fields are littered with them, junk. They're littered with them. And they get older, and they get rusty, and they get bad, and they get... This is other countries also. It's the greatest scam in history. It's the most expensive energy you can buy. They're ugly. A friend of mine comes from Minnesota. He's been in New York. He hit it big. He's a very successful guy, actually. And he wanted to go back, see his mother who's not well. And he went back to Minnesota. Hasn't been back there in 20 years. And he said, it's unbelievable what happened. He said, I'm driving down a highway and up a certain road, and the most beautiful fields. I remember them so well. And I was so looking forward to seeing them again. And I looked at them, and they had windmills all over them, these horrible, horrible structures. He's a very smart guy, this guy. He said, these ugly, horrible things. And he said, it was so bad, I actually drove back to see it because I couldn't believe it. Before I even got to my mother, I drove back. I said, how much do you like your mother? But no, it hurt him to see it. He said, I looked at this field that was one of the most beautiful places in my own mind and imagination that I've ever seen. And I said, it's littered with this garbage. It looked like a junkyard, he said. And then you get different manufacturers, and they don't look alike. And they're not painted alike, the different colors. You have, even if they're white, one's a beigey white, one's a darker white, one's a lighter white. And then they start to rust after 4 or 5 years. And then they start to wear out, and nobody takes them because you're not allowed to bury the propellers, the props, right? You can't bury the props for some reason. I don't know why, but they say that you can't bury a certain type of fiber, and if it goes in the ground, we're all going to die. It's what bullshit this is, okay? They can't buy. So what they do is they leave them up. If you go to Palm Springs, California, take a look. You go into this beautiful community. Before you go, it's like you're riding through a junkyard. Windmills all over the place. Tall ones, short ones, dead ones. They're all dead. Some are hanging over by a thread. They never take them down. They just leave them there, and they start to rust. It's one of the greatest scams, and it's also the most expensive energy. And the environmentalists say, oh, we love wind. It sounds so good, but it's a horrible thing. Environmentally, it's a horrible thing. I say that to you. It's wind, and we are going to have virtually no, one mandate we have, we're going to natural gas, nuclear. Nuclear, we just had a big signing with nuclear, making it easier, safer, and better. It's really, I would say, probably more than any other form of energy that's come about. It's been amazing what's been done. It's very safe, very good, and very inexpensive. But we're not going to let windmills get built because we're not going to destroy our country any further than it's already been destroyed. You go and look at these beautiful plains and valleys, and they're loaded up with this garbage that gets worse and worse looking with time. It starts when the rust comes. 4.5 years, it starts to rust. And it's very expensive to paint them. So they don't paint them, and they're horrible. What's happened is horrible. So we're not going to approve windmills unless something happens that's an emergency. I guess it could happen. But we're not doing any of them. I hope the Senate will soon pass a bill the House can quickly approve and get to my desk by the 4th of July. We'll have this done. And to further defend our auto workers, I imposed a 25% tariff on all foreign automobiles. Investment in American auto manufacturing is surging because of it. They have Mercedes all over. They pay 25% if they don't make the car in the United States. And because of that, and this could have been done long before Trump. This could have been done by any one of the presidents. I did it with China. The reason you don't have Chinese cars here is because I imposed it my last term. I actually asked the question. I said, do we have any Chinese cars here? No. Why? Because you imposed a 25 or 27.5% tariff on Chinese cars. So they're not coming here, but they are going to Europe all over the place. But I love China. We just made a deal, and I respect President Xi a lot. And we made a deal that's good for both countries. The deal we made with China, good for both countries. Going to be a lot of money made, and it's going to ultimately open up China, which is the ultimate thing. And I'm going to be working with President Xi. We had a long talk about it. And that's going to be good for China. It's going to be good for us. But we're going to be opening up China. That's bigger than what we signed. And I think had we not signed it, that wouldn't be happening. It's going to happen. It's going to happen fairly soon. But to further defend our auto workers, I imposed this 25% tariff on all foreign automobiles and investment in American manufacturing and auto manufacturing. All manufacturing is surging. And I might go up with that tariff in the not-too-distant future. The higher you go, the more likely it is they build a plant here. Ford has just announced that it's going to invest $500 million in some of the things involved in what we just did. General Motors is going to spend $4 billion. They just announced that yesterday. Stellantis announced that it's going to reopen its Belvidere assembly plant. That's good. I know the plant very well. Had a lot of problems. They're going to spend $5 billion. And Hyundai announced that it will invest $21 billion in America. They wouldn't have invested 10 cents if we didn't have tariffs, including for manufacturing American steel, which is doing great. American steel is doing great now because of what we did. You wouldn't have, if I didn't put tariffs on steel, they were dumping steel. China and a lot of other countries were dumping steel in our country. Garbage steel, dirty steel, bad steel, not structurally sound steel, real garbage, but it was still there, lots of it. And if I didn't put tariffs, I put 25 and 50% tariffs on steel, right? John James would put tariffs on steel, and we were doing great with steel. Now we're really doing great. A big investment's being made in Pennsylvania. You've been reading about it. They're going to spend $17 billion on U.S. steel. And all the steel workers wanted it. And we have a golden stock. We have a golden share, which I control or President controls. Now, I'm a little concerned whoever the President might be, but that gives you total control. It's 51% ownership by Americans. And we have a company, a great company, Nippon. They're coming in from Japan. They're going to spend $17 billion. And somebody said, well, what happens if it doesn't work out? I said, they spent $17 billion. We can't put it on a trailer and drive it to Japan. This is a steel mill. You know, some businesses you can move. You move your office, and that's where the business is. With this business, they're spending think of that, $17 billion. They're going to have them all over the country. I want to introduce several of the great Americans representing the millions of people whose livelihoods we're saving with today's action. I just can't tell you how incredible this action is, because nobody thought. This was one that I wasn't so, I would have rather had it than almost anything, but I was told by everybody, except that guy right there, that you couldn't get it. Bill Kent runs a chain of family-owned convenience stores that opened in West Texas in 1957, known as Kent Quick. And Bill, if you could come up and say a few words about what the signing means to you, please.
Wow, you're probably wondering why I've called you all here today, right? What a great day. From my perspective, I'm in the convenience store and petroleum marketing business. And what this does is it gives us freedom. It gives the consumers freedom to pick what kind of car they want. But more importantly for us, it gives us the ability to plan going forward. Because with mandates, we were forced to have to look at putting in infrastructure that frankly is extremely expensive and doesn't give you any return. So this allows us, it's going to free me up and our companies up to invest in what people want, in the cars they want, and it's a great day. So, Mr. President, Congress, thank you, Steve, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you.
And a friend of mine for a long time is John Hess. He's one of the top CEOs in the country. And he's now the CEO of Hess Corporation, one of the biggest oil producers. And he's a fantastic person with great knowledge of the subject matter. Can you say a few words, John? I see you in the audience. Come on, thanks.
Hi, I'm John Hess, and CEO of Hess Corporation, a proud producer of oil and gas in North Dakota and the Gulf of America. And so you all know, I was born in New Jersey, grew up in New York, and my father started our company by driving a secondhand oil truck. So, Mr. President, it's an honor to be before you today, and thank you for that. Mr. President, during your campaign, you made a commitment to the American people to repeal unworkable and costly mandates for cars and trucks and let the consumer choose what type of vehicle they drive. Today, with the bipartisan support of Congress, you're making good on that promise. I'd like to recognize Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, other members of Congress whose tireless efforts were critical to the outcome we're celebrating today. And a special thank you to Senator Capito for her leadership. This announcement today is about consumer choice and affordability for American families. It's also about making our country, auto industry, more competitive, Mr. President, and you said that very eloquently. As you know, Mr. President, one-size-fits-all policies like those adopted in California do not work. America, in every state, every American should be able to choose what they want to drive, not the government. We as a country would be basically leaning into our competitive advantage with this repeal on oil and gas. Oil and gas are a strategic industry for our country, underpinning energy dominance, economic prosperity, and national security. We are truly energy independence. So, Mr. President, on behalf of Hess Corporation, on behalf of the oil and gas industry, and every family across our country, thank you for your courageous leadership and your commitment to consumer choice and energy affordability. Thank you very much.
Very respected guy. The California EV mandates would also have devastated our nation's incredible truck drivers and the trucking industry, and I gave you a little bit of a rundown on that. But a diesel-powered semi-truck can drive from Reno, Nevada, I'll give you some other locations, Nevada to Los Angeles, California, and back on a single tank of diesel oil, diesel fuel, but the same exact journey would require an electric truck driver to stop also 6 times at recharging stations, adding an estimated 9 hours to the trip. I don't know too much about the trucking industry, but this is not sounding good. Here to discuss a little bit about the trucking industry, Gina Jones. And Gina, a real expert on trucks, I can tell you that. She's going to come up and tell us about trucks. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
President.
you very much.
And thank you, members and Congress. The trucking industry has America's back, and we are grateful that a president and the administration that have our back, too. Today, trucks are 99% cleaner than a generation ago. We need great partners in government to continue that process. We cannot allow one state's regulations to disrupt our entire nation's supply chain. Allowing California to do so would have negativity impacted the hundreds and thousands of truck drivers who deliver critical goods across the country each and every day. In order to deliver for American families and businesses, we need realistic national standards. With the signing of this resolution, Mr. President, you have delivered the leadership that trucking industries need. Promises made, promises kept. On behalf of the 8.5 million Americans who work throughout the trucking industry, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great job. So just to wrap it up, I say under the Trump administration, we will restore the full strength, might, and glory of the American auto and trucking industry. We'll protect our truck drivers, auto workers, small business people, and manufacturers all over our country, and actually all over the world, and that's okay too. They'll be doing a product that works, a product that's much more efficient, that's better, it's much better, less expensive, and we'll put affordable energy and affordable car ownership back on the center of the American dream as we make America great again, and that's what's happening. We're making America great. You know, when I went over to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, just a couple of weeks ago, the leaders of those countries, and they're very smart people, they said, you know, you've made in a short period of time America the hottest nation in the world. It's the hottest, you're the only one we talk about now. And 6 months ago, it was a laughingstock. They said that to me, those words, it was a laughingstock, and it was an absolute laughingstock. We've got the hottest nation right now in the whole world, and the numbers are reflecting it too. So I just think it's great. And what I'll do is I'll sign this, then we can take a couple of questions if you want. And we will be finished, and you're going to go off and you're going to build the most beautiful automobiles for 20% less money. And I want to thank you, man. You have done some job. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. You guys want to come up here? Surround it? Come on, surround it. Okay, we're going to sign 3 bills that do everything I just said. No auto pens allowed. That's for you. Keep that mic. You know, that pen was so good, give it back to me.
I'll take it. There you
That
go.
was a good one. No, I'll
That's a great
sign
one.
all 3 of them, because
Yeah.
you never know what you get with the new one. Number 2. Very steady hand. It's very important. Very steady. Only a steady hand can sign like that, right?
Absolutely.
Right? I've been told that, actually. And here's number 3, and it all goes into effect. Everything I said goes into effect. Lower prices, better cars, and choice.
sense.
You can say choice. We have choice for education, and you have choice for cars now, right? Common
Right,
sense
common
is right.
sense.
You're right. Common sense is right. Okay, now I can give you the pen. And I'll give you these. Shelley? Congratulations, John. Okay, you'll take these. Pass these around, fellas. Where's John James for his father?
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you have one, John?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Pass them around. Okay, everybody. There's a few extra. You're going to take them and give them to some of the people. Okay? Go ahead, please. All right. Brian, yeah, please.
Yes, sir. I have some very close friends who run some of the largest auto dealerships in Southern California, Rustnak Automotive Group.
Good.
Their message to you, they're 100% behind you right now. They know they're going through some soft sales period.
That's true.
They're in it for the long haul. What's your message to thousands of auto dealerships across this country that are kind of navigating through this tariff?
Yeah, they're going to do better than ever before. They're going to sell cars in America at levels that they've never even thought of before. And they're going to make more money than they ever made before. It's going to be great. They're going to be selling a better car, too. It's going to be a better product.
And they're behind you 100%.
I know. I know that. They have been behind me, right? They knew it was right. They've been asking for this for 25, 30 years, in all fairness. No, they're very happy. I told you the Auto Workers Union, we got tremendous votes. But they like me today even better than they did on Election Day on November 5th, because they see the results now. They're all happening. And yeah, and they have plants moving in, Brian. A lot of plants are moving in. Thank you very much for that question. Yeah.
Was Governor Gavin Newsom trying to kill the auto industry?
Oh, he was killing the auto industry. I don't think he knew it. I think he's a guy who he's just got a faulty thought process. You look at that train. The train is the most. I've seen people, stupid people with cost overruns for years. I've watched where something would cost twice as much or 3 times, but this thing is costing 20 times more. It's the most incredible disaster I've ever seen. That's one. The cars are just as bad. Everything's bad. And now you have this situation. So his own sheriff, who's a good man, by the way, said 2 days ago or 3 days ago that we could not have done this without the military. They were going to take over this whole, they couldn't have done it. Now today they got him to change his tune. He said, Oh, I think we could have handled it. It's so sad. He was so honest. I was using his quote all over the place, and they got him to change. But he knows. Los Angeles would be right now burning to the ground, just like the houses burned to the ground. It's so sad what's going on in Los Angeles. Think of it. They had a fire that should have never had because they should have listened to me in the water. Eventually, we broke in and we had the water come down from the Pacific Northwest. I could show you pictures now with the half pipes, the big half pipes coming all the way down California. Water, so much water. They don't have any droughts. They don't have any. They have so much water. They sent it all out to the Pacific Ocean for 20 years. So ridiculous. And we got them to take it now. But what they do and what they're doing, this is a big problem. And what they really want to do is keep criminals because they're trying to protect criminals. Sanctuary cities are a disaster in this country. And most of the voters don't want them. Politicians like them for whatever reason, but I think the politicians are wrong. That's why we won in such a convincing fashion. We won all 7 swing states. We won by millions of votes. We won 2,750 districts as opposed to 505. That's why when you look at the map, it's almost all red. It's got 2 little blue stripes on each side of it. It's almost all red. But now you have to... I always got along with Gavin. I like Gavin. I've liked him, always. He said I never called him. They asked him a question on Fox, I guess. I never spoke to him. He doesn't remember the call. He doesn't remember. I never spoke. And then I produced a phone call. I had it. It took me about 2 minutes. I said, well, here's the call. It lasted 16 minutes and 4 seconds. And it was at 12:30 in the evening. I actually made a call, didn't pick up. I called him a second time, and he picked up. And I told him, I said, you have to get your ass in gear because you're going to have a problem there. And he would have. If we didn't bring the military in, you would have right now something. And I went through it because I follow the rules 100%. And I watched in Minnesota where you have the man who ran for vice president of the United States. Fortunately, he was a disaster. But he wouldn't call in the National Guard. And I eventually called in the National Guard, but it was seven days late. I said, I'll never do that again. I'm never going to, if I see problems brewing, if they're not going to do the problem, I'm not going to wait 2 weeks. Because that city, Minneapolis, burned down. If you remember the CNN anchor, he was standing there saying, yes, this is a peaceful rally. And behind him, the entire city was on fire. It looked like World War II. And I appreciate the question. Please. Thank you. The plane crash was terrible. I've already told them anything we can do. It's a big country, a strong country. They'll handle it, I'm sure. But I let them know that anything we can do, we'll be over there immediately. But it was a horrific crash. It looks like most are gone. They actually maybe have a couple survivors, which is just heard. But that was a horrible crash. Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea what it might be. I gave him a couple of pointers. I said, maybe you'll look at this or that. We saw the plane. It looked like it was flying pretty well. It didn't look like there was an explosion. It just looked like the engines maybe lost power. But boy, that is a terrible crash. It's one of the worst in aviation history. Yeah, second. Well, I'd love to avoid the conflict. Iran's going to have to negotiate a little bit tougher, meaning they're going to have to give us some things that they're not willing to give us right now. I'm the last person. I've kept us out of wars. We defeated ISIS completely, 100%, and I haven't had it's peace through strength. I believe in peace through strength. We're the greatest military in the world. I rebuilt the military, as you remember, for 4 years. I rebuilt the military. And then we gave a chunk of it away, but it was still peanuts. It was a lot, but it was peanuts compared to what we rebuilt. Gave it to Afghanistan, one of the most embarrassing moments in the history of our country with the whole withdrawal, the way they withdrew was very embarrassing. But we rebuilt the military. We have the greatest, strongest military. We defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS in 4 weeks. It was told to be 5 years. It was going to take 5 years, anywhere from 4 to 5 years. We did it in 4 weeks, with, by the way, headed by the general who's now the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's why he's there. He said it would take 4 weeks, and he did it in 4 weeks. He did actually a little bit faster. So we have a great country, and we're going to keep it that way. And when it comes to Los Angeles or other cities, if we see other cities are gearing up, and these people are agitators, they're paid, they're professionals, they're insurrectionists, they're troublemakers, they're all of those things. But I believe they're paid, and we're going to find out through Pam Bondi and her great staff, her great people at Justice, who they are. And Mike, I think you're doing some investigations in that in Congress, but we're going to find out who they are, because they're really, I think what they're doing is unbelievably illegal. Just one thing. So they took the bricks away from people. They're walking in with satchels of bricks. Now, why do you have bricks? You have bricks because you throw bricks. They're very potent. If they hit you, they kill you. And they took them away. The military took them away. They saw him. What the hell is this? The guy could hardly carry me. Many bricks. He's a strong guy. Couldn't carry him. And they saw that, and they took him away. Then they found others with bricks. But they're ingenious. They also brought hammers along, very heavy hammers. And I saw them pounding the curb and pounding the sidewalk. And it was like a military operation. This guy's pounding strong, boom, big shots. And it was breaking up granite, the granite curbs. And the granite was breaking up, and the concrete was breaking up. And there was lines of people standing there, and they're handing him. And then he stopped handing them. They just went down and picked him up. It was so professional. I said, that's a professional organization. This is not like people at random. This guy's breaking up because they couldn't use the bricks. So who would think of this even? Did a lot of damage. A lot of curbs are broken. A lot of sidewalks broken. But I never saw that before. That's one I haven't seen. I thought I saw it all. And they have it on tape. And with that, people get killed. You know, they go to the bridges and they drop the concrete off the top of the bridge with a car coming along at 70 miles an hour, and the person dies. And we had a lot of car problems. You saw that. They were all over the road. They were littered all over the road where the cars got stopped by concrete going through the front windshield. Now, these are bad people. If we didn't go, Los Angeles right now would be on fire. It would be a disaster. And we stopped it. And last night was very good. Nobody showed up. You know why they didn't show up? Because we were there. If it was just the police, because the police are great. I know those police, they're great, but they're told not to do anything. They're not allowed to act. Thank you. Well, I don't want to say imminent, but it looks like it's something that could very well happen. Look, it's very simple, not complicated. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Other than that, I want them to be successful. I want them to be tremendous. We'll help them be successful. We'll trade with them. We'll do whatever is necessary. You know, I stopped a war between India and Pakistan. And I stopped it with trade. I don't think I've ever seen a story written about it, but it was pretty cool. They were getting ready. Pakistan was their turn to hit, and eventually they're going to go nuclear. And I stopped it. I called each. I respect each leader greatly. I know them. And I spoke to them, and I talked about trade. I said, but you're not trading with us if you're going to go to war, if you're going to start throwing nuclear weapons around. And I said it to both of them, and they were both unbelievable, actually. They understood it exactly. They stopped. I stopped that war with phone calls and trade. And India's here right now negotiating a trade deal, and Pakistan's coming, I think, next week. And I'm very proud of that. Nobody died. The nuclear weapons, they each have very severe, very substantial numbers of nuclear weapons. And I think we should get some credit for that. You know, the whole Republican Party should, because that's their mindset. Please. Yes, ma'am. What? Look, I've always been in favor of students coming in from other countries. That includes China. And we have 500,000 Chinese students coming in. I've always been in favor of it. Does it mean you that you have to watch people. Yeah, you have to watch students, but you have to watch other people also. I've always been strongly in favor of it. I think it's a great thing. It's also, it's good for our schools. It's good for, I think it's good for our country. I'm also in favor of having them stay. I've been in favor of letting them stay. If you get educated for 4 years, you're willing to get educated for 4 years. I like people being able to stay. You know, they have some great students. You have some, these are Republicans clapping, you know, because a lot of Republicans don't like that idea. I happen to like it. I'm a real Republican, believe it or not. But I like the idea. They go 4 years. To me, that's almost like, you know, just buying your way in a very legitimate way. And, you know, you have stories where Apple wants to hire somebody and they can't hire him because he can't stay. He went to a great school. He finished first in his class. They made him a big offer and everything's done, but he has no idea whether or not he's going to be able to stay. And I'm all for making sure that people like that can go to work for all of our great companies. And you know what they do? They go back to their country, and there are stories that are all over the place. They go back to their company and they start a company just like they were going to start here. They end up starting it in China or India or someplace else, and now they're among the richest people in the world. They've got thousands and thousands of employees that make a great. This is happening all the time because they're not allowed to stay. And I think we'll probably end up doing something about that, right? I think. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You in the blue, please. Light blue.
Thank you, Mr. President. How close are you to the setback on between Ukraine and Russia? We see a very bad escalation. Are you going to be leaving a hands of the Europeans?
I'm very close to the situation. I'm very disappointed in Russia, but I'm disappointed in Ukraine also because I think deals could have been made. And, you know, we're losing 5,000, 6,000 people a week, soldiers mostly, but also people living in towns because they're getting hit by missiles again. How'd you like to live in a building and you think a missile has a good chance of hitting your building during the evening? It's horrible. Must be horrible to live like that. But, I mean, we'll get it, but it's, I'm disappointed that it's not done. We did great with India and Pakistan. We did very good with Israel. I thought, look, October 7th was a disaster. People forget, you know, they like to forget. That was a horrible thing. But, you know, none of these things would have happened if I were president. If I were president, none of it would have happened. You wouldn't have the Israel problem. Iran was broke. They had no money. We had big sanctions on them. Biden immediately let them get rich, $300 billion they have right now. But they had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah. They had no money for anything. It was perfect. We wouldn't have had inflation that was caused by oil, Chris. The oil price went through the roof. It was also caused by their spending, but it was caused more by oil than anything else. The oil went so high, got close to $100 a barrel. And that also kept the war going with Putin because at $100 a barrel, that was a big money-making experience. But now it's down to where it's not so good for them anymore. No, it's very important to get that solved. That's a bloodbath. That's a terrible bloodbath that's going on. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Following up your question, answer on India and Pakistan for stopping the war between them. India says that they cannot talk to Pakistan unless Pakistan takes actions against terrorists.
We're going to get those two getting together, you know. I told them, India and Pakistan, they've had a long time rivalry over Kashmir. And I said, I can solve anything. I'll be your arbitrator. I will be your arbitrator. I can solve anything. And I started the first question, how long has it been going on? They said, 2,000 years. I said, oh, that's a problem. Maybe I'll take it.
Mr. President.
When I heard 2,000 years, I said, maybe I'll have John Hess solve that problem.
Mr. President, will you punish Israel for striking Iran?
Peter?
Thank you, President Trump. I have two. First, on immigration. What made you change your mind about targeting in California farmers and people in the hotels and leisure business?
Well, we're not targeting. In fact, if you look today, I put out a statement today about farmers. Our farmers are being hurt badly by, you know, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, you know, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not. And you know what's going to happen and what is happening? They get rid of some of the people because, you know, you go into a farm and you look and people they've been there for 20, 25 years and they've worked great and the owner of the farm loves them and everything else. And then you're supposed to throw them out. And you know what happens? They end up hiring the people, the criminals that have come in, the murderers from prisons and everything else. So we're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers and leisure too, hotels. We're going to have to use a lot of common sense on that.
And my other question about the Middle East, as the Israelis apparently gear up for some kind of an attack, a possible attack on Iran, are you trying to talk Netanyahu out of doing that, or are you so against Iran having a nuclear weapon that you're okay, he does his thing because it is not an American war?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. Look, I want to have an agreement with Iran. We're fairly close to an agreement. We are fairly close to a pretty good agreement. It's got to be better than pretty good, though, but it's got to be, I'd much prefer an agreement. As long as I think there is an agreement, I don't want them going in because I think that would blow it. Might help it, actually, but it also could blow it. But we've had very good discussions with Iran. Whether or not we get there, I can't tell you, but it'll happen soon. I say this, Peter, very strongly. They can't have, whether it's going in or not going in, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I'd prefer the more friendly path.
And can you tell us what the Israelis told you that made you start to evacuate the dependents of servicemen and women who are stationed in the Middle East?
They didn't tell me anything, but I said, look, there's a chance of massive conflict. We have a lot of American people in this area, and I said, we got to tell them to get out because something could happen soon. And I don't want to be the one that didn't give any warning and missiles are flying into their buildings. It's possible. So I had to do it. You know, I had the choice. Do I do it or not? Doing it has its downside, but it also has its upside. Like you're going to save a lot of lives if it should happen. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Right? Thank you. It's going to be a great day.
What would you like folks to take away from that day? What would you hope that they would remember? And also, Mr.
President, our country is, and how strong our military is. We have the strongest military in the world. You know, it's very interesting. 3 weeks ago, it was the end of world anniversary, end of World War II, and I called France and Micron, who's a good man. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "We're celebrating World War II, our victory." I said, "Your victory? Your victory? Tell me about that." And then I called somebody else, and I happened to speak to President Putin at the time. Now, in all fairness to him, he lost 51 million people, and he did fight. Russia fought. Sort of interesting, isn't it? He fought with us in World War II, and everybody hates him. And Germany and Japan, they're fine. You know, someday somebody will explain that, but I like Germany and Japan, too. But Putin is a little confused by that, you know. He said, we lost 51 million people and we were your ally, and now everybody hates Russia and they love Germany and Japan. I said, let's explain that sometime, okay? But it's a strange world. But I will say this, look, I want them to go away saying how great our country is and how great our military is. And I was making all these calls. For some reason, I spoke to like 4 different places. Sir, are you celebrating? And I said, you know, we won World War II and World War I, right? We won them. And yet we're the only country that doesn't celebrate. Everybody's celebrating except us. And I said, we should celebrate too.
Several No Kings protests planned across the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What do they call it? No Kings?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not going to get this. A king would have never had the California mandate to even be talking to him. He wouldn't have to call up Mike Johnson and Thune and say, fellas, you got to pull this off, and after years we get it done. No, we're not a king. We're not a king at all. Thank you very much. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir,
go ahead.
Mr. President, sir, you made a lengthy posting today on Truth Social about Senator Rand Paul. Do you expect to see him at the picnic tonight, sir?
I do. I look forward to seeing him, actually. I like him. He's the hardest vote in the history of the U.S. Senate to get. Probably won't get him, but he's a very tough vote. I mean, he's a very tough vote. He's always been a friend of mine. You know, I endorsed him and got him elected. I got him elected twice. But I don't think he understands how great this bill is. This is a great bill. No tax on tips, no tax on, you know, the Social Security payments. It's unbelievable what happens. No tax on overtime. You work overtime, no more tax. It's so, those are big, but they're minor compared to the big things. Taxes reduced. And let's look at the other side. If it doesn't get approved, a 68% tax increase, 68%, including the fact that the Trump tax cuts kick in. But it's a 68% tax increase and many other bad things. I don't even want to, some of them are so bad I don't even want to talk about them. I think it's one of the greatest bills we'll ever pass in this country. And I think that Leader Thune and this gentleman right here, what he's gone through on this with, you know, we started off with a majority of 1. Now I guess we have 7. So it's like easier, but it's really sort of 3. It's 7, but it really equates to 3, right? And we have great support. I mean, I can't tell you, I can't guarantee, but when you have a majority of essentially 3, where you can't lose anything more than 3 votes, and you get it passed, it's pretty amazing. And I think it's going to haunt the Democrats because most of the bill is common sense. It's tax cuts, it's border wall funding, it's military funding properly spent. It's all things that are like common sense. They're all good. There's nothing tricky about it. It's basic stuff. And we don't intend on getting one, think of it, not one Democrat vote in the House. Mike, not one. Maybe somebody will come along. I don't know how they can run for office. So many different things. We're gonna, very important, Medicare and Medicaid are gonna be strengthened, not hurt. You know, they're using fake narrative. Oh, we're gonna, no, they're gonna be strengthened. We're gonna strengthen them. They're gonna destroy them because under their policies, Medicare and Medicaid go away. Social Security under them is gonna be devastated. With us, it's gonna be kept, but much stronger than before. And very interestingly, I saw this and I proved it because for 4 years, I never hurt Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security. I've already been there. But they're going to destroy Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. They're going to wipe them out, in my opinion, because their policies are so bad, the country will have no money to pay for them. We're going to make them stronger than ever before. Thank you very much, everybody.
Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. A passenger flight to London crashed on departure from an airport in India with 242 people on board. What we know about the casualties and the investigation. Cracking down on sanctuary cities. That's House Republicans' focus today. 3 Democratic governors are on Capitol Hill right now facing questions about cities in their states with sanctuary policies. Latest from the ongoing hearing. And House Republicans this afternoon are bringing DOGE cuts to the floor. $1 billion slashed from public broadcasting and $8 billion from USAID. U.S. Ambassador to Russia will soon leave her post. Lynn Tracy served through one of the most tense periods between Moscow and Washington. New signs are fueling speculation that Chinese leader Xi Jinping's grip on power may be slipping. A look at the clues experts are pointing to.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today's Thursday, June 12th. I'm Stephanie Cox. We begin this hour with the plane crash in India. A Boeing 787 Dreamliner was headed to London when it went down after takeoff near the western city of Ahmedabad. There were 242 people on board. It's one of the deadliest air disasters in India's history. A police chief in India has said there appears to be no survivor. However, Air India's CEO later said that injured passengers were taken to hospitals, which would indicate there were survivors. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the latest and a warning: this report contains footage some viewers may find disturbing.
Wreckage and debris scattered in Ahmedabad after a passenger jet crashed in western India. One local resident described the scene.
I was sitting at home. There was a loud noise. It felt like an earthquake. I came out and saw smoke. I did not know it was a plane crash. Once I came here, then I found out. I saw the crashed plane, many bodies lying.
A senior police officer provided an update on the emergency response.
The London-bound flight of Air India crashed here soon after its takeoff. For preliminary reports, we have learned there were 230 passengers on board, and the plane crashed at a doctor's hostel. The rescue agencies, firefighters, police, and civil administration reached the crash site within 2 to 3 minutes. The search and rescue operation is currently underway.
Air India said the flight included Indian, British, and Portuguese nationals and one Canadian. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi posted on X, quote, "The tragedy in Ahmedabad has stunned and saddened us. It is heartbreaking beyond words. In this sad hour, my thoughts are with everyone affected by it. Have been in touch with ministers and authorities who are working to assist those affected." British Prime Minister Keir Starmer took to the platform as well, posting, quote, "The scenes emerging of a London-bound plane carrying many British nationals crashing in the Indian city of Ahmedabad are devastating. I am being kept updated as the situation develops, and my thoughts are with the passengers and their families at this deeply distressing time." Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Indian officials are extending their condolences today to families of the victims aboard the Air India flight. The National Transportation Safety Board said it will lead a team of U.S. investigators traveling to India to help in the investigation of the crash. Here's Air India CEO Campbell Wilson.
Flight AI-171 was carrying 230 passengers and 12 crew members on board. Of the passengers, 169 are Indian nationals, 53 are British nationals, there are 7 Portuguese nationals, and 1 Canadian national. The injured passengers have been taken by local authorities to the nearest hospitals. We are actively working with the authorities on all emergency response efforts. A special team of caregivers from Air India is on their way to Ahmedabad to provide additional support.
The airline said the flight crashed about 5 minutes after taking off at 1:38 p.m. local time. The plane hit a doctor's hostel. Footage shows the tail end of the jet sticking out of the building. Local television channels showed smoke billowing from the crash site. Officials were still working to determine the exact casualty numbers. The local police commissioner said that fatalities on the ground would likely add to the death toll. Boeing shares were down about 5% after the accident. Boeing said it was aware of the initial reports and was working to gather more information. In a unanimous decision today, the Supreme Court says a family can sue the federal government for mistakenly raiding their home. The case involves a Georgia family whose home was mistakenly raided in the middle of the night by the FBI in 2017. A SWAT team knocked down the door and assaulted the innocent occupants before realizing that it was the wrong house. The lower court had barred the family from suing the government, citing a federal law that protects employees acting within the scope of their employment. The Supreme Court said there are exceptions for some situations involving negligent or wrongful acts. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote the opinion for the court. He said the exception generally makes the government liable on the same terms as a private individual would be under state law for the same conduct. 3 Democratic governors are on Capitol Hill right now facing scrutiny from Republican lawmakers about sanctuary city policies in their states. Chairman James Comer defends Republicans' strict immigration policies as an effort to make America safe, while Democrats say the GOP's approach is inhumane. Here's a look at some of the back and forth during the hearing.
These criminals have been convicted of crimes including vehicular homicide of a woman, sexual abuse of children, slashing a victim with a machete, and carjacking, among many other crimes. It's absolutely sickening that sanctuary jurisdictions seek to protect these criminals rather than protect Americans.
Like this new ICE sign that says report all foreign invaders to ICE, with Uncle Sam there holding up the sign. This could have been a Gestapo member 75 years ago, report all Jews. 100 years before that, it could be a plantation owner that said report all Negroes and all coloreds.
Who assaulted one of your residents with a machete, choked a police officer, and then when in custody, assaulted corrections officers. That is sanctuary policy in a nutshell, and that is what your state supports, and so do these other governors. That is what is so wrong, why the American people hate this concept.
We have turned over 1,300 people.
So you disagree with it?
We turn over 1,300
people. Did the sheriff make the wrong
people.
call?
Those are local policies that we would not have done in the state of New York.
Governor Kathy Hochul of New York will face a tough re-election in 2026 in a state Republicans have made inroads in traditionally Democratic areas. Hochul, along with Governors Tim Walz of Minnesota and J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, defended their state's policies. Hochul firmly saying her state cooperates with federal immigration enforcement. The governors are urging Congress to enact comprehensive immigration reform to secure the border while still addressing humanitarian concerns. The hearing comes just hours before the House floor will vote on a bill to force Washington, D.C. to comply with federal immigration enforcement. Turning now to the unrest in Los Angeles, the Justice Department is opposing California Governor Gavin Newsom's request to block the president's deployment of National Guard troops in Los Angeles. It's urging the court not to grant the request, calling it a political stunt that puts lives at risk. Newsom sued the Trump administration earlier this week, arguing the deployment is illegal and impedes state authority under the Posse Comitatus Act. That act says the military cannot be used for civilian law enforcement except under very specific circumstances. Federal officials say the troops are not patrolling neighborhoods, but defending federal buildings and personnel. A federal court hearing is scheduled for today. Meanwhile, arrested demonstrators were loaded onto police buses last night as a curfew took effect. President Trump said yesterday that Los Angeles would be burning to the ground if not for the measures taken by his administration.
I'm very proud to have helped Los Angeles survive. Los Angeles right now, if we didn't do what we did, would be burning to the ground. And that's not over yet.
Protests over immigration raids are popping up across the country. Several cities are reporting arrests, fires, and curfews. The White House yesterday issued a stern warning.
And let this be an unequivocal message to left-wing radicals in other parts of the country who are thinking about copycatting the violence in an effort to stop this administration's mass deportation efforts. You will not succeed. Any lawlessness will only strengthen this president's resolve to defend the majority of Americans who want to live their lives peacefully, free from the fear of violent, criminal, illegal aliens. The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind.
In Seattle yesterday, protesters set a dumpster on fire outside a federal building. They also clashed with police who responded with pepper spray. Spokane, Washington's mayor imposed an overnight curfew after dozens were arrested outside an ICE office. In New York and Chicago, protests near ICE facilities led to clashes and dozens of arrests, some on felony charges. The demonstrations come ahead of Saturday's planned military parade in Washington, D.C. A nationwide day of protest has been planned to coincide with this. President Trump has warned that they will be met with heavy force. House lawmakers will soon vote on the first bill specifically to codify DOGE cuts. It targets more than $9 billion in cuts. House Republican leadership says it's the first of many.
You can't make deficits and debt disappear overnight, but we're at it. And we're going to continue this step-by-step process to get our fiscal house in order and do right by the taxpayers. We're chipping away at it every day, and the rescissions vote on Thursday is an important signal. House Republicans are serious about getting our fiscal house in order, and we'll do that.
Johnson is working on securing Senate support for the GOP's big budget bill. As some expressed concern, the bill doesn't do enough to address the national debt. Today's package cuts $1 billion from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which contributes funds to outlets like NPR and PBS, and another $8 billion cut from USAID, codifying cuts the Trump administration sought early on but were challenged in court. This is the first of several so-called rescissions packages the Republicans plan to bring to the floor. The White House has sent several such requests to Congress. And hundreds of workers who were fired from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are getting their jobs back. A spokesperson at the Department of Health and Human Services says more than 450 jobs will be reinstated. That's about 20% of the 2,400 CDC employees who were dismissed. The cuts were part of a massive reorganization in April. Some of the workers focused on HIV, lead exposure, and workplace safety. The HHS spokesperson didn't say why those jobs were reinstated or when those employees can expect to go back to work. Up ahead, a new civil rights lawsuit is challenging race-based college funding. Why Tennessee and a powerful advocacy group say a major federal program is unconstitutional. That story and more after the break.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
My name's Stacy. I'm 57, and I was adopted in 2020.
We were adopted in 2019.
And we were adopted in 2021.
We had a house, and it sounds crazy, but it wasn't a home. The one thing that Jake and Emma brought is it became a home.
When I met Dakota, he had just turned 14.
You weren't there for the first this and the first that. I missed the first words, but we got a lot of other firsts.
Watching her say, oh my God, I cannot believe I got my license. And she's like, I passed. And I'm like, girl.
See them grow. It is.
They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
You and you. Kids in the middle. What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete, but it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
A federal judge has delivered a major legal win to Mahmoud Khalil. He's the Columbia University student at the center of pro-Palestinian protests on campus. The judge ruled Khalil's detention is causing irreparable harm to his reputation, career, and First Amendment rights, and cannot be justified by foreign policy concerns. Khalil was arrested in March and held for over 3 months after Secretary of State Marco Rubio cited his activism as harmful to U.S. interests. Though the court granted Khalil's request for an injunction, his release has been delayed until Friday morning to give the Trump administration time to appeal. A lawyer with the ACLU called the ruling a win for the Constitution and the rights of citizens and non-citizens alike. Now to Omaha, Nebraska, where over 70 illegal immigrants were detained yesterday during an ICE raid at a meat production plant. The agency said some had arrest warrants, prior convictions for DUI, or had been previously deported. The raid happened at a Glen Valley Foods plant. The food packaging company said it was surprised by the raid and had followed the rules regarding immigration status. The company said federal agents had a warrant alleging over 100 people were using fraudulent documents. Homeland Security called the action the largest worksite enforcement operation in Nebraska under the Trump administration. ICE says a criminal investigation was ongoing into what it called a large-scale employment of illegal immigrants. The agency says a man from Honduras brandished a weapon and assaulted federal agents and officers. A new civil rights lawsuit is putting race-based college funding under scrutiny. The state of Tennessee and the group Students for Fair Admissions filed suit yesterday. They're challenging a federal program that awards funding to universities where Hispanic students make up at least 25% of enrollment. The lawsuit argues the program is unconstitutional. Congress approved over $350 million for it in 2024. Students for Fair Admissions is the same group behind the landmark Supreme Court case that struck down affirmative action in college admissions last year. The suit names the Department of Education and Secretary Linda McMahon as defendants. Tennessee officials say the policy forces schools to choose between losing federal funding or violating the state's new ban on race-based preferences in education. And David Hogg will not seek reflection as vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. His announcement comes after members of the DNC voted to hold a revote for the vice chair positions, which are currently held by Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta. Hogg's decision not to run again also ends a months-long fight within the party after Hogg announced he planned to fund primary challengers against some Democratic incumbents. However, the move to hold the revote comes after there was a complaint about the process the party used in the February election for the positions. That challenge predated Hogg's announcement. Had Hogg run again, he would have faced off against Kenyatta. The DNC's gender parity rules state the first vice chair must go to a man. Electronic voting for the first seat opens Thursday and ends Saturday. The second seat can be filled by a candidate of any gender. Voting for the second seat will run from Sunday through Tuesday. And the waitlist to sign up for a Trump card visa is now open. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick posted about the news on social media with a link to the website trumpcard.gov. The Trump card is a $5 million visa that would give foreign nationals the right to live and work permanently in the U.S. Lutnick has said the card would replace the government's EB-5 immigrant investor visa. That program grants green cards to immigrants who make a $1.8 million investment into the U.S. or $900,000 into economically distressed zones. Wildfires in Oregon are burning out of control near the Washington border. The Oregon State Fire Marshal said the Rowena fire started yesterday afternoon in Wasco County. The fire has already burned about 2,500 acres. As of this morning, it's 0% contained. Strong winds are making the fire spread faster and harder to fight. Local media reported that more than 800 homes were ordered to evacuate last night in northern Wasco County. Another 2,500 homes are on evacuation alert. Interstate 84 was closed for almost 20 miles, but reopened early today. US 30 is still closed for about 10 miles. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek invoked the Emergency Conflagration Act to bring in more firefighting help. And the Federal Aviation Administration said today it's shrinking the area around Reagan Washington National Airport where helicopters can operate. The FAA imposed permanent restrictions in March on non-essential helicopter operations around Reagan. This was to eliminate mixed traffic between helicopters and passenger jets. They also permanently closed one key route. The changes came after a deadly mid-air crash in January. An American Airlines jet and an Army helicopter collided, killing 67 people. This led the National Transportation Safety Board to issue urgent recommendations. Senator Jerry Moran said the Army will curtail VIP military helicopter flights around the Pentagon after safety concerns were raised. Moran said the Army will limit training missions near Reagan Airport and also limit the number of defense officials who can use helicopters for transport. The FAA is currently negotiating a plan with the Army to govern future military flights near commercial planes around Reagan Airport. And President Trump says he's open to extending a July 8th deadline for trade talks, but that he may not need to. What he says about the trade deal with China. And Australia says it's confident the U.S. will proceed with the AUKUS submarine pact after reviewing it. The deal is believed to focus on limiting China's growing power in the Indo-Pacific. And in Austria, more details emerge about the suspect in a brutal school shooting in that country that took 10 lives and the alleged shooter's life. Those stories and more after this break.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure in my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. And a few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did.
Please call or go online to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor, and for a limited time only, your first month's gift will be matched.
Thank you.
Stephanie Cox, and this is World Watch. The U.S. ambassador to Russia is set to soon leave her post. Lynn Tracy served through one of the most tense and difficult periods in relations between Moscow and Washington. The U.S. Embassy in Moscow announced her planned departure earlier today. Tracy arrived in Moscow in January of 2023. She was greeted by protesters chanting anti-U.S. slogans. Russia at the time questioned Tracy's suitability for the post. Her term was dominated by the Ukraine war, which triggered the biggest confrontation between Moscow and the West since the Cold War. Tracy was notably involved in efforts to win the release of U.S. citizens jailed in Russia. This included journalist Evan Gershkovich and former Marine Paul Whelan. They were eventually freed in August last year as part of a big East-West prisoner swap. It's not clear yet when exactly Tracy will leave her post. And staying with Russia, Moscow and Kyiv exchanged another group of ill and severely wounded prisoners today. Ukraine says all of its troops who came back today need some treatment. The Kremlin says the Russian troops are already receiving psychological and medical support. Moscow says its troops returned from Ukraine by crossing into neighboring Belarus. Kyiv and Moscow agreed to exchange prisoners of war last week. If completed, it would be the largest swap since the war began. The exchanges have been taking place in multiple stages this week and are expected to continue. Foreign ministers from European countries said today they were ready to step up pressure on Russia. This will include further sanctions involving the energy and banking sector to weaken Moscow in its war with Ukraine. The meeting in Rome involved representatives from France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, Britain, and the European Union. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and a Ukrainian representative also joined the talks.
Because we need to make sure that Ukraine is in the best possible position to, one, maintain the ongoing conflict with Russia, the unprovoked Russian aggression against Ukraine, but also to be in the best possible position when a long-term ceasefire / a peace deal arises, to make sure that Putin will never ever try this again. And all these issues are discussed today.
The European Union's foreign policy chief also said the EU's concerns with Iran are larger than the nuclear issue. This includes Iran's support for Russia, as well as the detention of EU citizens in Iran. The Weimar Plus format was launched in Warsaw in November 2024. It mainly focuses on strengthening transatlantic security and helping Ukraine. Israel's parliament rejected a parliamentary vote today to dissolve itself. It says an agreement was reached regarding a dispute over the military draft. This gives Netanyahu's ruling coalition further time to resolve its worst political crisis yet and avoid an election. Netanyahu's been pushing hard to resolve a deadlock over a new conscription bill. Some religious parties in Netanyahu's coalition are seeking exemptions for ultra-Orthodox Jewish seminary students. Other lawmakers want to scrap any such exemptions altogether. The exemptions have been a hot-button issue in Israel for years, but have become particularly contentious during the war in Gaza, as Israel has suffered its highest battlefield casualties in decades. Now to southwest China, where a large fire broke out yesterday in the city of Chongqing. The fire started at a temporary motorcycle parking lot. Witnesses say that lithium battery packs in parked electric scooters likely caused the fire. The local fire department says the blaze was extinguished in 21 minutes and reported no casualties. President Trump says the deal to save a trade truce with China is done. Speaking to reporters on a trip to the Kennedy Center, Trump said he would be willing to extend a July 8th deadline for talks with other countries, but he didn't think he'd have to.
I don't think we're going to have that necessity. We made a great deal with China. We're very happy with it.
Trump didn't offer more details and said some countries would simply be told what their deal was.
We're dealing with about 15 countries, but as you know, we have about 150 plus, and you can't do that. So we're going to be sending letters out in about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
The agreement with China came after 2 days of intense talks in London. That deal confirms an earlier agreement hammered out in May, which had seemed under threat over Beijing's curbs on the export of critical rare earth minerals. Those restrictions will now be lifted, with some US measures also eased. But many details remain unclear, and Washington is still imposing a 55% tariff on Chinese goods. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that rate was fixed and unalterable. Speaking earlier in Congress, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Beijing needed to show it was open to fundamental change.
They're in the midst of a real estate downturn. Some may cause a crisis, and they are trying to export their way out of it rather than take domestic measures such as increasing consumption, dealing with banking problems, or dealing with the real estate crisis.
Bessent said the London deal did not mean Washington would lift curbs on the export of cutting-edge chips in return for the supply of rare earths. Market reaction to the agreement was muted, with many investors saying they wanted to see more detail.
Speculation is swirling about whether the head of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping, still holds full control. The questions are driven by some unusual signals coming from Beijing's top political circle. Last week, Xi Jinping appeared in a state broadcast as he welcomed the Belarusian president in Beijing. But before that, he had been absent from the public eye for 2 full weeks. All this as trade tensions are still running high between the U.S. and China.
Here's what happened. She did not appear publicly from May 20th through June 4th. The 2-week absence marked a rarity among his 12 years of leadership. For months, speculation has been swirling that Xi's grip on power may have significantly weakened. Here's why. The Chinese military experienced a major shakeup. 2 top officials close to Xi were targeted. One was removed and the other vanished from the public eye. Reports say he was purged. Given these major changes, Xi's long absence only fueled questions. On top of that, on 2 days during his disappearance from the public, the People's Daily, China's leading state newspaper, did not feature any articles about or images of Xi on their front page, another uncommon sign during his rule. Then last Wednesday, Xi finally appeared on Chinese state media when he hosted Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. But unlike previous foreign visits held at Beijing's Grand Great Hall of the People, including Lukashenko's last visit in 2023, this time the setting was noticeably smaller and more casual. What's more, Xi usually leads a monthly meeting of China's top leadership body, but state media did not report on whether the group met in May or not, another rarity. A senior Nikkei Asia correspondent said such a lapse would be unlikely if Xi's power were completely stable.
Some analysts believe Xi's power may now be more in name than in reality. Longtime China hawk and commentator Gordon Chang posted on X ahead of President Trump's recent phone call with Xi, saying, quote, Xi Jinping has lost substantial influence and power, and this means President Trump will be talking to an empty suit during his upcoming phone call. Some China analysts believe that factions opposing Xi include the military's second-in-command Zhang Yuxia and former Premier Wen Jiabao. Beijing stepping up provocation. Tokyo says Chinese fighter jets came dangerously close to Japanese reconnaissance aircraft. And Japan also reported seeing 2 Chinese aircraft carriers near its territory. The Chinese fighter jets harassed 2 Japanese reconnaissance aircraft from a distance of 980 yards and even as close as 50 yards. The Chinese Communist regime appears to be stepping up its aggression in areas around Japan. Japan says it's the first time it's seen 2 Chinese aircraft carriers near its territory. One went as far as Japan's easternmost island. It's also the first time that one of the aircraft carriers went as far out as the second Pacific island chain. This brings it closer to U.S. territory of Guam. The Chinese regime has a total of 3 aircraft carriers. One is still in the testing phase. And a Taiwanese court sentenced the captain of a Chinese cargo ship to 3 years in jail. He was found guilty of intentionally damaging undersea cables off the island in February in a case that alarmed Taiwanese officials. Prosecutors said the man was captain of a ship with a Chinese crew registered in Togo. Taiwanese authorities detained it after suspecting it dropped anchor near an undersea cable, resulting in damage. The court found the captain allowed the ship's anchor to pull on the cables, causing them to break. He admitted that he told the crew to drop anchor, but denied he was guilty of damaging the cables. The court said Taiwan's Changhua Telecom suffered losses of more than $570,000 in repair costs. 7 other crew members were deported after prosecutors determined there was insufficient evidence against them. And Australia's Defence Minister Richard Marles said today that he was confident the AUKUS submarine pact with the U.S. and Britain would proceed. His government will work closely with the U.S. while the Trump administration constructs a formal review. Australia in 2023 committed to spending $239 billion over 3 decades on AUKUS to acquire and build nuclear-powered submarines. The agreement is believed to be about pushing back against China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific. China has played a role in rising tensions in places like the South China Sea. The countries involved haven't directly named China as the reason, but they say security concerns in the region have grown a lot in recent years.
We should understand that our defence and our security depends on our network of alliances. And as far as AUKUS is concerned, it's the strongest one and the most important one we've struck in 70 years. And it's the one that I've noticed that the Chinese in particular have really reacted to, probably more than any other I've seen. So that tells you something, I think, about its strategic merit.
A Pentagon official said that the U.S. is reviewing the AUKUS deal. They want to make sure it fits with President Trump's America First agenda before his talks with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Albanese is expected to meet Trump for the first time next week at the G7 meeting in Canada. They'll talk about a U.S. request that Australia raise its defense spending. Australia was scheduled to make a $2 billion payment in 2025 to the U.S. under AUKUS. This would boost U.S. submarine shipyards and speed up lagging production. The goal is to allow the sale of up to 3 submarines to Australia from 2032. And chipmaker Micron Technology said today that it's expanding its U.S. investments to about $200 billion. The company plans to spend $150 billion on chip manufacturing. Micron said this adds another $30 billion to its earlier plans, sending its shares down about 1% in pre-market trading. Micron is now one of many U.S. tech companies investing big in the country. This comes as President Trump pushes to make more semiconductors in the U.S. Micron's additional investment will center around building a second leading-edge memory fab in Boise, Idaho. The company will also expand a manufacturing facility in Manassas, Virginia. Micron said that its investment aims to bring advanced packaging capabilities to the U.S. It's a key process used in making high-bandwidth memory for AI. Stay with us, and we'll bring you more news right after this break.
I was a young dad of 3 amazing kids. I was finally following my dreams. Just when you feel like life is starting to come together, you get kind of hit in the face. I was born with a congenital heart defect and had open heart surgery as a kid. I was supposed to go to the heart doctor once a year, and I finally went. He listened to my heart, and I'll never forget, he sat back and he said, yeah, it's time for open heart surgery, or you risk your aorta rupturing, and that's it. I was scared out of my mind. The night before my open heart surgery, I made a goodbye video for my kids. Be strong. Take care of your mom. I love you guys.
Seeing, all the kids hug him goodbye and hoping that they were going to be able to hug him again.
I love you. But I did make it, thanks to the work of the American Heart Association. So that's why I'm asking you to join me. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help get the next person trained in CPR, get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care, as well as fund the next medical breakthrough like these heart valves that helped save my life. When you give $19 a month with your credit card, we'll send you this special t-shirt to show you're a part of our community of monthly donors.
I'm most grateful that I get to have a husband that I get to grow old with, and a husband that gets to be there for his children.
I believe without the American Heart Association, I would not be here today. If this can happen to me, it can happen to you, it can happen to anybody. Your donation can literally help save a life. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
250 years of valor, honor, and sacrifice. A parade celebrating the birth of the U.S. Army in our nation's capital, showcasing America's military might.
This parade salutes our soldiers' remarkable strength and unbeatable spirit. You won't want to miss it.
Tune in for our live special coverage Saturday, June 14th, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on NTD.
We begin this hour with the plane crash in India. A Boeing 787 Dreamliner was headed to London when it went down after takeoff near the western city of Ahmedabad. There were 242 people on board. It's one of the deadliest air disasters in India's history. A police chief in India has said there appear to be no survivors. However, Air India's CEO later said that injured passengers were taken to hospitals, which would indicate there were survivors. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the latest, and a warning: this report contains footage some viewers may find disturbing.
Wreckage and debris scattered in Ahmedabad after a passenger jet crashed in western India. One local resident described the scene.
I was sitting at home. There was a loud noise. It felt like an earthquake. I came out and saw smoke. I did not know it was a plane crash. Once I came here, then I found out. I saw the crashed plane, many bodies lying.
A senior police officer provided an update on the emergency response.
The London-bound flight of Air India crashed here soon after its takeoff. For preliminary reports, we have learned there were 230 passengers on board, and the plane crashed at a doctor's hostel. The rescue agencies, firefighters, police, and civil administration reached the crash site within 2 to 3 minutes. The search and rescue operation is currently underway.
Air India said the flight included Indian, British, and Portuguese nationals, and one Canadian. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi posted on X, quote, "The tragedy in Ahmedabad has stunned and saddened us. It is heartbreaking beyond words. In this sad hour, my thoughts are with everyone affected by it. Have been in touch with ministers and authorities who are working to assist those affected." British Prime Minister Keir Starmer took to the platform as well, posting, quote, "The scenes emerging of a London-bound plane carrying many British nationals crashing in the Indian city of Ahmedabad are devastating. I am being kept updated as the situation develops, and my thoughts are with the passengers and their families at this deeply distressing time." Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Indian officials are extending their condolences today to families of the victims aboard the Air India flight. The National Transportation Safety Board said it will lead a team of U.S. investigators traveling to India to help in the investigation of the crash. Here's Air India CEO Campbell Wilson.
Flight AI-171 was carrying 230 passengers and 12 crew members on board. Of the passengers, 169 are Indian nationals, 53 are British nationals, there are 7 Portuguese nationals, and 1 Canadian national. The injured passengers have been taken by local authorities to the nearest hospitals. We are actively working with the authorities on all emergency response efforts. A special team of caregivers from Air India is on their way to Ahmedabad to provide additional support.
The airline said the flight crashed about 5 minutes after taking off at 1:38 p.m. local time. The plane hit a doctor's hostel. Footage shows the tail end of the jet sticking out of a building. Local television channels showed smoke billowing from the crash site. Officials were still working to determine the exact causality and the casualty numbers as well. Local police commissioner said that the fatalities on the ground would likely add to the death toll. Boeing shares were down about 5% after the accident. Boeing said it was aware of the initial reports and working to gather more information. The governors of New York, Illinois, and Minnesota are testifying before the House Oversight Committee over sanctuary policies in their states. We're tuning into that hearing now.
Number one, they want to fix this. They don't want to fix this because the brokenness is a feature, not a flaw of the system, because it is beneficial to them when it comes to campaigning. If they can't stoke fear, then why are they going to say have anybody vote for them? Because that's what people are doing. They're voting out of fear. But Ms. Perryman, we know each other a little well. And I know you got a law degree. And it seems like we all need law degrees in here nowadays to understand the Constitution. So really briefly, I just want to make this point. There is a certain person that was afforded, say, due process. But let's say if, say, Donald Trump had been charged with all of these cases that he got charged with in 4 different jurisdictions, if he wasn't afforded due process, there could have been a possibility that he just would have been locked up and thrown somewhere, right?
That would be a possibility.
And then maybe we wouldn't have a tariff war or anything else that we're dealing with or all the other nonsense. But the point is, he was afforded due process. And regardless of the political opposition, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, I thought, believe that due process should be afforded to everybody, even him.
Due process is for everyone.
Okay, so the Fifth Amendment doesn't say that it's just for the people that are Americans?
It does not.
It says anybody on our soil?
It's for everyone.
Okay, it's pretty simple. I don't know why we are having issues, but I thank you and I will yield.
Chair recognizes Dr. Gosar from Arizona. Oh, before I recognize Dr. Gosar, Mr. Palmer has a unanimous consent request.
To enter to the record testimony before the Subcommittee of Oversight and Government Reform, Subcommittee on Federal Law Enforcement, from Joseph M. Humeyer, who is.
Without objection to order.
Mr. Chair, I have unanimous consent.
Okay, Ms. Tlaib.
Can I please issue into to the record a statement from Senators Chang, Kavanaugh, and Santana and Bayer in response to the ICE detention and deportation of Mikel Bogoya Duranto?
Without objection to order. Now, Chair recognizes Dr. Gosar from Arizona.
Governors, good afternoon. Would you agree that good process builds good policy, builds good politics? Pretty normal, right? Would you agree, Governor Pritzker?
Yes, sir.
How about you, Governor?
I would agree, Congressman.
Governor Hochul?
I would agree with that.
Good. Now, would you support the disclosure of federal fundings to nonprofits, either directly or indirectly? Governor Pritzker?
Federal funding of nonprofits, just generally, there is actually nonprofits do report their.
Well, they do kind of, because we don't get that. That's all blocked out, okay? But you can't make good decisions if you don't have that. Would you agree?
All of it is available, as I understand, publicly, yes.
Now I'm going to quote U.S. Supreme Court Associate Justice Louis Brandeis. He said, "In a government of laws, existence of the government will be imperiled if it fails to observe and uphold the law scrupulously. Our government is potent, the omnipresent teacher. For good or for ill, it teaches the whole people by its example. If the government becomes a lawbreaker, it invites contempt for the law. It invites every man to become a law unto himself. It invites anarchy." So do you agree with, Governor Pritzker, do you agree with Louis Brandeis on this quote? How about you, Dr. Walton?
I do. It's what the President Trump has done, though. He is the one who has broken the law, and the United States government.
Governor Hochul.
We follow all the laws, federal and state.
Okay, so why would I ask you about nonprofits financing and this quote from Louis Brandeis? What if I were to present you evidence that U.S. citizens and even foreign citizens on foreign soil were coaching illegal aliens how to bypass U.S. immigration law? Now let me remind you, as soon as an alien crosses the border illegally, they become criminals under the federal law. Governors or sanctuary policies blatantly ignore the supremacy clause, as Mr. Palmer expressed, of the U.S. Constitution, and it circumvents federal immigration laws to harbor criminals. As of July 2024, under the Biden-Harris administration, there were over 660,000 illegal aliens with criminal histories in the United States. But I'm talking about everyone, not just criminals. Once you violate the law by entering our country illegally, let me be clear. You're aiding and abetting criminal illegal aliens, which is a felony under Title 8 U.S. Code 1324, punishable up to 20 years in prison or life in prison or even the death penalty. Seems kind of weird, but if this aiding and abetting results in someone's death, which this committee and all Americans know has happened. Wouldn't you want to even err on the aspect of caution? I would. I really would. Now, Governor Hochul, do you like nature, and do you consider yourself a conservationist? I do. I'm one of those.
I'm particularly fond of New York State's great state parks, so yes, of course I love nature.
Good. So why would you allow illegal aliens to destroy a National Park Service land at Floyd Bennett Field? Yes, I was there. I got to see it all. But I mean, even putting people in that process.
I would hardly call it a park. It was a place that people used to train for military exercises.
But you know what? Somebody found it as a park, right? Did they not? They consider it a national park. It's a park. Okay.
Technically, it's under the Department of Interior.
Okay. Governor Walz, do you know the estimated size of 2 milligrams?
I think generally, yeah.
You can barely see it's the tip of a pencil, sharpened pencil at that. And that's a lethal dose of fentanyl, which your running mate, Harris' open border policies welcome to the United States. Similarly, your sanctuary policies are playing games with American lives. Do the millions of lives lost to fentanyl constitute an all-out assault on our broken borders? They do. Yes or no? Do you support tribal communities, Governor Walz?
Do I support tribal communities?
Yeah.
Under PL 280 or?
Oh, do you support?
Yeah, I certainly
tribal?
do.
No. Okay, I do. Yeah. Okay. What about the transnational criminal cartels trafficking drugs and people across the tribal lands? This is epidemic. Epidemic. So I'm going to finish up by this. Governors, this is my promise to you. I will work tirelessly with President Trump to secure the border, build a wall, stop the flow of fatal fentanyl into our nation, and I will see that you are held accountable for the violations of our crimes against the people of the United States. Our immigration system is not broken. We just needed somebody like Donald Trump to uphold the rules of law. I pray for the safety of our immigration, ICE officers, and all the officers, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Ms. Crockett has a unanimous consent request.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'd like to submit a unanimous consent request for, this is from the Alabama Reflector. It says, study says undocumented immigrants paid almost $100 billion in taxes.
Without objection, so ordered.
And my second one is from Reuters. White supremacists behind over 80% of extremism-related U.S. murders in 2022.
Without objection, so ordered. Now recognize Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have a couple of unanimous consent requests. The first is from Law and Crime magazine. Judge rebukes Department of Justice explanation for ignoring the court order.
Without objection, ordered.
Subhead is the government again evaded its obligations. The judge upbraids the Trump administration's woefully and insufficient explanation for flouting his court order. The second one is from NBC News. Trump administration's threat to suspend core U.S. legal right sparks outcry and alarm.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Ms. Presley from Massachusetts.
Thank you to our Democratic governors for being here today. This hearing is an utter and complete waste of your time. It is a waste of taxpayer dollars. Republicans have called you here alleging that you are circumventing federal law. You are not. But you know who is the poster child, who is violating federal law daily? The current occupant of the Oval Office, Donald J. Trump. To make matters worse, these hardworking governors had to leave their states to be here in a moment when their work is incredibly difficult. Because Donald J. Trump and his accomplices and co-conspirators, who, by the way, Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about your constituents, and he doesn't give a damn about you. He doesn't even respect the seat you hold in Congress as a co-equal branch of government. But Donald Trump and his accomplices, many of whom are in this room, are hell-bent. What you want your legacy to be is that you're tearing food away from our babies and medical care from our elders. These Democratic governors have to stand in the gap and figure out how to stretch budgets and modify programs to keep their constituents fed and alive. Constituents like this precious little soul that I wish I didn't have to leave to come be here. Layla, who drew me this rainbow, a 5-year-old who lives with a rare liver disease, had a successful liver transplant at Boston Medical Center. Thank God she is thriving today. But Layla will need immunosuppressant drugs for the rest of her life that are paid for by Medicaid. And without Medicaid, well, I shudder to think what might happen to Layla. But for sure, a family will at least go bankrupt trying to do everything to keep their baby alive. That's what these governors, that's the situation that they've been put in because you're a big ass, ugly bill. And if it comes to pass, And they're dealing with the fallout of this White House pulling federal grants recklessly. Grown men throwing temper tantrums. So again, let me be plain. The Trump administration is breaking the law, not these Democratic governors. Ms. Perryman, how many legal challenges is the Trump administration currently facing?
I believe there's over 300 right now.
And Ms. Perryman, can you explain how litigation like this has helped to shield and defend vulnerable communities?
Absolutely. Without our courts upholding the rule of law and upholding the rights of people, right now there could be federal funds frozen across the country that would endanger things like Head Start and Meals on Wheels and community safety programs, including community safety programs that help prosecutors and help law enforcement in states and communities across the country. The administration has terminated over $800 million in Office of Justice program grants that we are having to challenge in court, and the list goes on and on and on.
Thank you, Ms. Perryman. Thank you for your good work. That's right, in case after case. The media might not want you to know, but we are winning. Trump tried to end birthright citizenship, blocked. He tried to shut down asylum, blocked. He tried to defund cities, blocked. And because we are winning in court, Republicans are trying to change the rules to rig the system. Tucked in the big ugly bill the Republicans voted for is a provision, Section 70302, titled Restriction on Enforcement, that would restrict the judiciary from enforcing court orders and holding government officials accountable. This is an intentional and deliberate attempt to undermine the courts so that the Trump administration can break the law with impunity. Republicans, Ms. Perryman, pretend to care about law and order, but this provision is the exact opposite. What message does this send to people who count on the courts to protect their rights?
It suggests that the people that voted for the bill don't want the American people protected and that they don't want them to access their courts and access the ability to protect their rights.
Don't want the American people protected, that part. Allegedly all in the name of law and order and safety. This is about nothing but power and control and abuse of power and terror, which makes everyone less safe. The shame and the sham of it all. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Grofman from Wisconsin.
Thank you. Glad to see we have 3 governors here. I hear a lot about Illinois being from Wisconsin. I just had some builders in my office yesterday talking about all the Illinois people building houses in southern Wisconsin to get out of Illinois. In any event, I think we have a very generous country here right now. Every year, about 850,000 new citizens are, another 8 million new citizens are sworn in, naturalized in this country. I think we have about another 500,000 people coming in this country on work visas and a little under that coming in on student visas. So we're very generous about allowing people in this country. I should have said 850,000 new people sworn in. In any event, it's not impossible to get here legally. Nevertheless, we have a lot of people every year overstaying visas or still sneaking across the border. And the question I'm going to ask you guys and gal is, do you believe we should have immigration laws in this country? We'll start, I guess, we'll right down the line. Governor Walz. Congressman, the question is, should we have immigration laws? Yes, that's it. Yes, we should. Governor Pritzker.
They're very important. In fact, we should have more robust immigration in this country, and it should be done under a law.
And Ms. Hochul?
Yes, of course, we should have immigration laws.
Okay.
In fact, we do.
The question is, when people come in this country and break those laws, do you believe they should be enforced? Let's say people come in this country, Gulf of Mexico, Pacific Ocean, however they come here. Should they be spun around and sent back out of the country, or should we just allow them to stay here?
It depends if they're, Congressman, if they're coming on an asylum claim, protected status.
Exact question. Assuming they come on an asylum claim and that claim has been rejected, should they be allowed to stay here?
The judge denies their asylum claim? No, they should not. They should not be able to.
Governor Pritzker, if somebody's overstaying, we'll say a different way, overstaying their say, work visas, a student visa, should they be allowed to stay here or should they be removed?
Given due process, sir.
Should they be
Due
removed?
process is required, yes.
Okay, Governor Hochul.
Yes, agree, following due process, the federal government has the authority to make those removals. It has nothing to do with.
I'll
the
ask you,
skills that-
should people who are here illegally get welfare benefits? Mr. Governor Walz? Are they at food stamps, low-income housing?
Should they get assistance that would be here?
Yes.
We provide for all of our people in Minnesota. It's one of the reasons.
Okay, so your statement is that if somebody comes here, say on an asylum claim, whatever, they should be able to get low-income housing benefits, almost free rent, free food, free health care. That's what you believe?
I believe states' rights, and in some states they do.
Well, I know that's what you believe we should do. Okay, Mr. Governor Pritzker?
It's the federal government's job to determine what welfare benefits at the federal level, and I can say to you that we have hundreds of thousands of people in the state of Illinois who are undocumented but have been living, abiding by the law, holding down a job, paying taxes.
Okay,
for
so are they
years and
getting?
years.
Are they? Do you believe it's right then that if they come here, they should get free housing, free medical care, free food?
It depends on the circumstances. I'm just explaining to you, though, that we have millions of people across the United States who are here, and were here long before you got elected.
I know all
or I
that.
got
I mean, the
elected.
question is, you don't have a problem with them getting benefits, these benefits.
Again, law-abiding taxpaying. We're talking about people who are adding to
Okay,
our
I'll take it to
society.
be, well, not if they're not working. But either way, you have no problem giving them those benefits?
We provide benefits to people all
Okay,
across.
Ms. Hochul, is that the same thing with you? Do you believe people come here who are not citizens, come here, make a asylum claim, they should all be getting food, health care, housing?
Depending on which law you're referring to, in certain circumstances, we do provide these services, but they're not universal.
Okay, well, to most people, your average person who's overstaying a student visa in New York, do you think they should be getting food stamps, housing, medical care?
We provide Medicaid for individuals who are senior citizens or moms with new babies.
Well, we know when people are eligible, the question is people who are not citizens who are overstaying a student or work visa. Are they
People
eligible?
are making their own way here in the state of New York. In fact, I have 400,000 open jobs. I wish you could.
You're not
find a
answering the
path-
question.
find a
I take
path
it to
get-
mean, I just.
Give
by a
us more
second,
work
because I want you to answer
authorizations.
the
Let's put
question.
them to work. Let's put them to work.
But you refuse to answer the question. If somebody is otherwise eligible for low-income housing or food stamps or medical care in New York, do you believe they should be entitled to those benefits?
There's
as
not a
Americans?
blanket answer to that. It depends on which provision of the social services law. In some cases, it's allowed. In some cases, it's not.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Ms. Simon from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would hope that I am also able to go over my time.
I'm sorry, California.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I, as my colleague did, I hope I am allowed to also go over my time by approximately 45 seconds.
Well, I've been very fair. You've had, Mr. Frost went over a minute and a half.
Okay, I'm just asking. Thank you. I appreciate that, sir. I just want to
I didn't say you could, but you can go ahead.
I just want to make sure that I have a fair opportunity to also speak as an individual of this body. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Lynch. I am so honored to be here today and having this really important conversation. You know, we talked about victim advocacy in this place. Actually, I was a victim advocate. I was at 8133 in San Francisco for many years and had to sit with families who buried their folks and sitting, literally figuring out how to mend together obituaries. I've worked with young people who have been victims of gun violence and literally have had to scrub blood off the streets. There is nothing that anyone can say to a family, I get it, that is grieving. We have a lot of work to do, not just here in this country, around the world, to deter violence. I come from a state, the fourth largest economy in the world, with the best public education, higher public education system in this country. In fact, at California, Berkeley, we lead some of the research that are keeping folks here and your relatives alive. those labs and that research is being attacked by this administration, but I digress. I have a number of questions today, but this hearing has been so difficult. Not only was I a victim advocate for many years, working with folks who had witnessed and who had been victimized by rape, by murder, I also led the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights of the San Francisco Bay Area that was founded by JFK, and our asylum clinic honored the work of this country by supporting folks who came here escaping tyranny and violence to just be met by an immigration system day after day that spat in their face. I'm thankful to both members of the private bar and our community lawyers who are doing their American duty by supporting people who are leaving tyranny. I have actually one question. I'm concerned that we're deflating the conversation around public safety. It's my understanding that the current administration, and this question goes to you, Ms. Perriman, has deducted or stopped payments of upwards of $1 billion in local public safety funding around the country. With my time remaining, can you talk to us a little bit about this very hypocritical moment in time where we're uplifting public safety and yet we're taking resources away from communities, police departments, community safety leaders, and organizations that are taking guns out of kids' hands? Give us a little bit of the flavor. Talk about what money has been taken away from communities under this administration.
Yes, since January, the administration has abruptly terminated a range of funding and grants for community programs across the country, including grants under...
Stay with us, and we'll bring you more news right after this break.